So a very good warm welcome to all our participants and panelists to this webinar that's organized by Nanyang Polytechnic with the theme on COVID-19, a threat or opportunity for the aquaculture industry. I'm Mark and I will be the host for the first part of this afternoon's program. We have 9 speakers today. Some of our eminent speakers will share on how the aquaculture industry has had to grapple with the disruptions caused by the pandemic. Others will present on their innovations which have been used to bolster aquaculture security and sustainability in Singapore. But before we begin, just a few housekeeping rules. If you'd like to ask a question after a speaker has finished his presentation, please type the letter Q in the chat box and we will unmute you. Alternatively, you may also wish to type out your questions in the Q&A box. And speakers, we will also buzz you when you have about 2 minutes left. And we will not be recording this session. So thank you all once again for coming, panelists, participants, and all our guests. Without further ado, I would like to invite the school director, Dr. Joel Lee, director of the School of Applied Sciences, to give us a welcome address.
Hello, everyone. My name is Joel. It gives me great pleasure to extend my greetings and a warm welcome to everyone. Let me see what, just checking whether my mic is on. Warm welcome to everyone attending the 4th annual installments of NYP's Aquaculture Symposium series with the theme COVID-19, a threat or opportunity for the aquaculture industry. With the escalation of the COVID pandemic, we have had to depart from our usual practice of having an in-person conference this year and have pivoted to the virtual Zoom webinar platform instead. So as the hit song from Starship goes, nothing's going to stop us now. The evolving COVID-19 pandemic has affected all countries in numerous ways, and food supply chains have also been severely disrupted. This webinar explores the impacts of the COVID pandemic on the aquaculture industry and the rapid changes that have been made to strengthen food sustainability and food security in Singapore and the region. Many of the 9 speakers today are from the aquaculture in related industries who have innovated to tackle challenges caused by the pandemic. They will be sharing their experiences for a deeper insight into the current situation in the aquaculture industry and the measures which have been formulated to adapt to the new normal. As you may know, today's webinar is organized by the team from Nanyang Polytechnic's Center for Aquaculture Diagnostics and Vaccine, also known as CADV, the School of Applied Science. Now, CADV is focused at innovative, safe, and effective solutions to tackle the health-related problems of cultured aquatic animals and has an established track record for fish vaccines development. CADV also undertakes applied research and industry commission projects in the domains of precision aquaculture and cell culture meat or seafood, also known as cellular agriculture. More recently, the team has started working on mud crab and vename shrimp vertical indoor precision farming systems, as well as aquatic species cell cultured meat technologies. Our capabilities as a school do not just stop at sustainable aquaculture research. We do a lot more. For example, the school also has capabilities and expertise in post-harvest processing of seafood, new food product development, for example, producing or developing ready-to-eat food products. We're also into food safety analysis and even food waste valorization, monetizing waste from the aquaculture industry. We also collaborate with other schools in NYP as part of NYP's 360 Solutioning Initiative, which comprehensively supports the industry's needs from product conceptualization to product development, and finally to product marketing, tapping on the capabilities of all the schools in NYP. And this range from engineering, IT, design and media, to business management, and of course, health sciences, and also with our applied science. If you would like to connect with us for an industry project collaboration or research project, please feel free to get in touch with either Jeff or Mark from the organizing committee. Finally, I'd like to thank all our guest speakers, 9 guest speakers, our participants, that is you, all of you out there, who have taken precious time off from your busy schedules to attend this webinar. We won't have today's symposium on webinar if not for the organizing committee as well. This is led by Mark and Jeffrey, supported by Norman and Azar. On behalf of the organizing committee, I wish each one of you a rewarding and a pleasurable experience. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Joel. Thank you very much. Let's get started with this afternoon's program. The first speaker today is Dr. Richard Leboucher. Richard is the Director of Commercial Strategy Aquaculture at Temasek Life Sciences Laboratory. Before joining in March 2020, he spent 15 years developing innovations for aquaculture. These involve R&D projects in 25 countries, and he completed the development of 15 products in nutrition, mechanics, genetics, optics, software, probiotics, and chemistry. After being an entrepreneur at Genotop, Richard became Disruptive Innovation Manager for the group IMV Technologies and then became consultant. He implemented research and training for more than 60 farming companies, transforming ideas into viable businesses. A food lover, Richard obtained his PhD in fish genetics and nutrition, an MBA, and an engineer's degree in aquaculture. Richard this afternoon will be sharing his perspectives on the aquaculture industry and R&D in Singapore. Richard, please.
Thank you for the introduction. Good afternoon, everyone. I just want to check, is my screen okay? Can you see it? Yeah, thank you. Yes, thank you very much for welcoming me today and introduce these topics about COVID-19. Is it a threat or opportunity? I talk today as an aquaculture scientist. I'm based in Temasek Life Sciences Laboratory. I'm going to tell you a little bit about our research and also share with you some insights about this COVID-19 situation and the impact on aquaculture. What are my thoughts about this? But also for those who are not very familiar with aquaculture, I'm going to start with a very short introduction about our industry. Okay. So I would like to start with 2 charts that I like because I think they give a good idea about the overwhelming growth we experienced in our industry these past years. On the left, you see a chart showing the aquaculture and the fisheries in tons. And during the last 60 years and the coming 30, there is a projection, as you see, and there is a 2015 a transition that is of interest. It may be anecdotal, the first moment where aquaculture became more important than fisheries. It's not that anecdotal if you think that it's a transition that started in the Stone Age, when the humanity started to farm instead of hunting. And our generation experienced this transition for real with the end of the last place fisheries that were initially hunted. Now it's also a farmed area. So this process is called by archaeologists the Neolithization, and this is something we've lived in our generation. On the right, it's another example of the same aquaculture growth, but also with other animal productions. And you see that looking at the projection on the same timeline, 2007, the aquaculture became more than beef meat, and it's expected to be the same with pig meat and poultry meat in 2028 and 2040. Just to give an idea that altogether this aquaculture and seafood, and we'll come back to that later, is a massive source of animal food for humanity now. Another way to look at it is the number of animals that is produced every year. And I think that's of interest because if we look at this data from 2017 from FAO, we realize that there is approximately 300 million bovine produced every year for human consumption. For in the same ID, for duck, it's 3 billion, chicken, 52 billion, rabbit, 1 billion. It's a bit difficult to estimate that for aquaculture, but if you go species by species, there is a chance to end up with a number that I'm going to share with you today. It's my estimate, the total quantity of aquatic animals that are produced every year for human consumption, is around 700 billion. And I think it's an interesting way to put it, how impactful we are on the life creation, especially when you think and keep in mind that the estimate of the total human being ever born on the earth is between 80 and 110 billion, which gives an idea of how big is this industry. Okay. Now, about Singapore, I think one of the most specific feature I would consider in Singapore has been the rapid transition, and that's not an empty word in my mouth, because when you look at the situation in 52, where the production was mainly coming from kelongs with no farm at this time, in 85, a rapid transition into cage farming, and a growing number of farms, mainly cage farms. 2008, the beginning of large cages production in deeper areas. 2018, the beginning of RAS systems, large-scale RAS systems, and now more and more RAS systems in different organizations like multi-floor RAS, floating RAS, vertical RAS. And this transition is very fast if you compare to other countries and other industries. The transition in production systems, and this has impact, and we're going to see some examples. So just to keep in mind that at the end of the day, for farmers and for the aquaculture stakeholders, adapting this rapid transition has been already very challenging. To manage the market price, the risk on the farms, the trading consequences, the environment interactions, the disease, all this together made the day of every farmer quite challenging, and for any type of species and any production in the world. So now let's come to the topic of today, which is the impact of COVID-19 pandemic and associated with the COVID SARS-2 virus. Probably you know that it's still a bit early to analyze the impact of the pandemic on aquaculture. However, there have been a very nice work done by FAO this year to collect some information, published information. I invite you to visit to check this reference. I will give you the reference on the next slide. I will use some of their data today to share what I think is the most important, and also some conclusion about that. The first thing that has been evidenced is the trade impact. Here you have the two examples of the CTK. I just need to check. I don't remember CTK, cargo ton kilometers. Starting in 2019 to decrease. The same for shipping container throughput on the right. So you see on the red areas, the seasonally adjusted average of these two trading indicators that are the flight and the cargoes, the strong impact on trading. It's an issue because for seafood product is known to be one of the most traded products. So at the end, when you have such impact, you expect to have such decrease in the trading. You expect to have an impact on the production, or at least on the trading of this product. So it came in two steps, and the consequence of this decrease has been mentioned by FAO as the first time in 60 years with a decrease in production. So we are working. I personally started my career in an industry that was continuously growing for years with quite a significant 5 to 9% growth every year. And now for the first time, this crisis made such an impact that there is a decrease. So for sure, it's the first strong impact for the producers, for the retailers, for the shipping of all these seafood products, and for the global industry. Okay. The second impact, I think, that is quite important, and probably you've experienced some of them, is a bit more difficult to standardize and to summarize. It's the impact on seafood customers. Why is it more difficult? Because I think it's more heterogeneous in time and between countries. There have been quite different behaviors observed these past 2 years in front of, associated with the seafood consumption. I've listed here some of them that I think are interesting. The first one, and it brings us back to the whole history of aquaculture production, but during the first lockdown, in some countries, consumers moved from fresh fish to long shelf life products, and especially canned products, which is interesting. Frozen also, especially in the US and Europe, there was quite a big increase in this consumption. However, there was, in the same time, and not always in the same countries, the fear of contamination from food products. Probably remember this crisis when there was a doubt that some packaging can ship the virus from country to country. For the moment, there is no proof of that, but this has impacted quite a lot the consumers. The other one that you've also all experienced, and that has impact also on our industry, is the replacement from restaurant with takeaway food services and online platforms. It's not true everywhere, and for example, the e-commerce has visibly grown in China and some Asian countries, but not especially in Europe. Not as much, at least. And in countries where the direct fish marketing has been developed, there is really a tendency for the consumers to go to greater diversity and local sourced fish and fish products. And I think that's very important, and we'll come back to that later. The trend to the local product. The other behavior that I've listed, and again, it's really thanks to the FAO work. I would like to mention their work because it's very, very interesting and very useful in this period. The falling production and supply disruptions have affected the fish prices and the consumption pattern. And there is an example in Cambodia on snakehead fish, for example, which is popular in the area, that became more expensive in the urban area compared to the rural areas. And it just emphasized the fact that local food available in rural areas is still available, but in some cities it may be more and more difficult to access this product. And very important also that all this pandemic has impact on purchasing power and poverty also, and in some cases on food security, meaning that in some areas the lack of resources, the lack of import of some things will have an impact, or is already having an impact on production and on food security. Now, if we think about the farmers, it's probably a bit even more complex right now to estimate the impact on farmers. What has been observed is that in some countries, and especially in Asia and Africa, the farm gate prices decreased. And I will come back to the impact of these farm gate prices after. But practically, it means that even in some areas, you may have an increase in the retail or in the e-commerce platform of some aquaculture products. It doesn't mean especially that the farmers is getting more money. And this happened in a few countries where the farm gate price, which is really the price of the product at the gate of the farm, decreased and had an impact that is really typical from aquaculture, which is related to risk management. In a farm, you really manage the risk in priority. You already have a lot of things to take care about, the resources, the disease, the weather, the water quality. So it's always a matter of risk. And as there was a decrease in price, a lot of farmers seems to have lower their cost, meaning that there is a potential decrease in these countries in stock. Less fish and less animals have been stocked into the ponds, have been harvested also, and that's convenient with aquaculture. Probably you know that if you don't want to harvest, you can reduce the feeding, and then you buy some time. And all this small risk management behavior at the farm level will probably have an impact in the coming month on the production again, which means that it has created a long-term effect on the production capacity. Because if you don't load the hatcheries, if you don't stock juveniles, you cannot provide grow-out animals. So this is still a bit underestimated, probably, and it may have other impacts in the future, especially now in some countries, the new variants can interact again with the supply of feed, the supply of even the processing in some countries is quite impacted. So just a small word about that, why this risk management is important in our industry, and probably some farmers participate to this webinar that they know that, but this is really a priority because the situation for many of them is already quite difficult. To illustrate that, I will use this example of a book. It's Manual on Floating Net Cage Fish Farming in Singapore, released in 1981 by Primary Production Department. A very useful guide to farmers. It was at the period where farmers were guided to invest on cages, and it gives a lot of information about the prices, the cost of juveniles, the feed. And I use this data to do an exercise I do sometimes with farmers, which is how to estimate the production plan, the cost benefit, basically the profitability of the farm, including the biological parameters. And what appears when you use this data is that at this time the costs were higher than the sales. And this is something quite typical in at the farm stage that is usually balanced with incentives, subsidized, and the debt in agriculture. That is an important factor too. But just to keep in mind that when you are in this situation, any small changes will increase your risk. And if you want to balance this risk, you're usually quite careful. So in countries where the price increased, okay, great, there is an interest to stock more. In countries where the farm gate price is decreased a little bit, there is a timing. I mean, they will have a break for a few months before investing again. Before concluding, I will just tell a bit more about our research. Some of them are directly in a relationship with this COVID theme. We did start with genetics in Temasek Life Science Laboratory because we have quite a good expertise in genetic broodstock and selection. Genetic selection and broodstock populations on Asian sea bass starting in 2003, and saline tilapia that we are now selecting in Lim Chu Kang, one of our production sites. We do work in large-scale systems. This is something I like to focus on to mimic the condition of the farmers, so that when we have something we believe that it's representative of the industry and that can be transferred easily. So we work in the type of new system you see in the middle, the picture, on St. John Island, where we do most of our research. So this is a system from Singapore Food Agency we are working with, and this is quite a very powerful research tool for industry aquaculture results. We do work on genetics, reproduction, animal husbandry, and breeding, just to make sure that the model species are well known and the hatchery capacity and hatchery skills in Singapore are maintained and improved. And this past 16 months, we did work a lot on nutrition, especially to fit with the 30 by 30 target. So we did work a lot with the SFA Marine Aquaculture Center on St. John Island using this extrusion platform you see on the top to produce large batches of prototype feed and create a very fast prototyping platform where we can formulate, produce, and test on fish any innovation with alternative ingredients. And again, in a very industrial scale approach. So at the end, we can really communicate with farmers about this type of results. It's not lab scale; it's the larger scale. We do work a lot on RAS also, mainly because there are many systems in the area, and that's in tropical aquaculture still required to know more about that. And my role in TLL is also to interact with industry. That's why I gave you today some insight about also the industry and not only research. But we have this nutrition genetics research activity and an interaction with the industry to be able to propose stakeholders plans to innovate, analyze of the market, and to bring any product to the market efficiently. We recently started to work on microbial protein with a new grant and on vaccine also on CBAS with 2 new recent grants in TLL. And we now work more and more on byproduct use, how to include the local byproducts in aquafeed. So now I've mentioned this part, I would like to summarize what I've and probably give some ideas about what I think are the consequences of this COVID-19 situation in aquaculture. As we've seen, that the situation has already impacted. And I think what is probably the most important, to my opinion, is that national priorities have changed and they are moving toward food security. And it's not only here, it's everywhere. There is many areas where the governments realize that, okay, if we have an issue, if there is a risk to manage, we need to secure a certain quantity of feed that is locally produced. Doesn't mean that it fulfill all the needs, but at least we can be reliably supplied by local production. In the countries where the situation of aquaculture food insecurity is still the case, the first step is not really to produce more, but to produce whatever the challenging conditions are. And that's very important, I think. And in the countries where the local market has still not recovered, we should expect in the coming month, and it comes back to the farm gate price, we should expect that the farmers will be prudent, will be careful about the investment in the coming years. So if we consider that this food security we require farmer resilience, I think that's very important. It's essential to empower existing farmers and to support financially and technically these farmers. If we talk about food security and the case of COVID-19 situation, I think that's very important. The intensification is part of the solution, but it's not the only solution because it's more risky. Intensification brings some risk. It's more dependent on external factors. Unfortunately, the more you produce, the more you import. There's no choice. And it requires higher level of schooling and higher salaries. That's important also to realize. I do work every day in a large RAS system on St. John Island. You don't use that as you use a pond. It's a bit more complex and you need more skills to run this. So I would, as a conclusion, say that I think the first priority to make sure we have the choice to decide if it's an opportunity or a threat will be to secure that the farmers with demonstrated and repeated productions will survive and have the capacity to invest in the coming 10 years. Because investment in agriculture is a very good indication of production and of good results. I think it's really important for countries that are interested in food security to be sure that these guys, these farmers, these companies are supported enough to project themselves and to invest in the future. That's it for this introduction about this topic. I will be pleased to have any question. Thank you for your attention.
Thanks, Richard, for that very insightful and comprehensive talk. There are actually two questions in the Q&A box. So if I could just articulate them. The first one is from Dr. Chia Buntat. It has been said that the potential of aquaculture of feeding the masses is limited by diseases and unsustainable practices. In your view, beyond the pandemic, is this still true? And if not, what breakthroughs are happening or needed to fulfill the potential of aquaculture?
They are part of the limitations. There are many more. But they are part of those limitations for sure. Running a farm right now is really a day-to-day sailing between all these limitations. And we usually use the law of minimum model in agriculture, where you always lose by the scarcest resource. And if it's the disease in your area that is the main challenge, okay, this is probably the priority, and this is what will be the most limiting factor. But for other countries, it will be the temperature, the climate change, it will be the supply in feed. So each country will have limitations for different reasons. In each farm will have limitations for different reasons.
Okay, thanks. And there's a second question. Where do you think the aquaculture industry in Singapore is heading towards in the next 10 years? How do we circumvent the high cost of production in Singapore?
I don't know. What I try to do and what we try to do in TLL is to provide the answers to the questions. So if the other research partners have questions that are really related to the aquaculture production, I think we can help and we can provide some answers. The same for agencies and farmers for sure, because we do work a lot with farmers. However, it's difficult to tell exactly where we're gonna go. It will probably depend a lot on the trajectory that is decided. So if the trajectory is decided, probably we can make anything. I think many production systems are achievable, and I do believe there is a real interest to, as I said, protect the existing farmers. I think that's important because they have been quite resilient, and resilience is a value we will need a lot in this context.
Thanks, Richard. And I think there's a question in the chat box actually from Suraida American. I understand the need for local production and aquafeed security, but even with local feed production, you will still need to import raw materials. How can you solve the raw material supply disruptions and especially the rising prices?
Probably the question is more related to Singapore in this case. Yes and no. I think it's we can go to a quite high replacement of imported products by local bioproducts right now, because the local waste production is important. However, I'm not saying any country in the world right now can run on full local products production capacity. There is still import and export, and this is really a legacy from the world, international economy that as we're living right now, and it's probably a political local choice to say, okay, let's try or let's not try. I think we can go quite high in local product use. I don't want to say any numbers, but I have a few numbers in mind. I think we can go quite high.
Okay, thanks, Richard. So maybe we can take just one last question if there are any more for Richard. From Dean Jerry. again, in the chat box, COVID has had an impact on seafood supply, in part due to consumer concerns on food safety. But this food safety issue will remain long after COVID, and is of increasing importance. But do you think there are ways in the evolving aquaculture industry in Singapore that can help lower concerns? Mm-hmm.
Yeah, thank you for the question, Dean. Very easy question. To lower the concern about food safety, I was interested by the behavior at the beginning of the consumers move toward canned food and frozen food because it's and especially canned food. It's quite a reliable conservation process that has been a lot used in seafood. I think it's quite it has a good safe image. This canned seafood on the food safety level. Frozen is a bit more difficult, I would say. But I would be interested by this canning as a way to change the perception of food safety. Okay, I think I'm alone now. So I suppose we're gonna move to the next speaker. I think Mir Pershad, right? You're the next. I will stop sharing my screen and invite you to start sharing. And I'm sorry, I cannot introduce you personally, but probably we'll be joined soon to follow.
Yeah, no worries at all.
So sorry, I think we had our whole room's connection was temporarily yeah, we are back on campus. Yeah, so I don't know. The other guys, the whole admin team got kicked out. Sorry about that, Richard. So
okay.
So I guess the question was answered, and I probably need to introduce Mihir next. Is that right?
Yeah.
Okay, so thanks, Richard, once again, and sorry for what happened. Yeah, we're on a landline, but still, it does happen sometimes. Okay, so thanks a lot, Richard. Thank you very much, and thanks to everyone who asked those questions. So let me introduce our next speaker, my good friend. This afternoon, our second speaker is Mihir Pershad. Mihir is the founder and CEO of Umami Meats. And Umami Meats is a Singapore-based startup developing delicious, affordable, and sustainable cell-cultured seafood. So quite a departure from traditional aquaculture practices. Mihir has an academic background in protein biochemistry and has spent his career working to commercialize deep tech innovations to address the grand challenges of humanity. And most recently, he was venture partner at Early Charm Ventures, where he led the commercialization of university spin-outs at the intersection of biotechnology and aquaculture. And he also authored a book called Cultivated Abundance. He's given me a copy. It's a really great book to read if you're interested about sustainability in food supply and in the future of prospects of cultivated meat. And I think this afternoon, Mihir will be speaking on his foray into the lab cultivated seafood scene, I believe. So, Mihir, please. Thank you. Thanks.
Thanks very much for the very kind introduction, Mark, and glad to be with everyone here today. So as Mark mentioned, I'm going to be giving an overview of a potential additional new technology that's emerging that could allow us to have more sustainable seafood production in the future beyond what may be feasible through aquaculture and sustainable wild fisheries. So I think one of the things that we hear a lot, right, is the struggles and the challenges currently facing the seafood industry pre-COVID. In many ways, we're already fishing many species fully to capacity, or we're actually overfishing them. And according to a UN report, that number sits at about 93% of all global fisheries that are fully fished or are being overfished. But the demand continues to rise. And particularly what we see is that the demand is outstripping capacity, particularly for species that we have to catch in the wild and that we can't farm. And so now there's sort of emerging trends that are making this potentially more challenging. Number one, I would say, is climate change, right? As the oceans warm, as they become more acidic, it changes where the fish are able to live, how they grow. And this can put additional pressure on the ocean ecosystems and on the fisheries. And even for aquaculture, with the exception of wrasse, most in-ocean or in-sea aquaculture relies upon the prevailing conditions of the ecosystem. So if the oceans are warming or becoming more acidic, or other things are happening in those environments, it can put a lot of our existing aquaculture under substantial pressure. And so what we see is that in large part, the current practices are going to lead to not having very many fish left in the ocean by mid-century. But we have an opportunity to really make that an improvement, I would say. On the other side of this, looking at the consumer demand, we currently see that demand is expected to increase by about 80% within the next 30 years or so. And the vast majority of that is happening here in Asia Pacific. So Asia is expected to have 70% of global seafood consumption by 2030. That's a tremendous number to just think about, right? That one sort of continent plus, let's say, will have more than 2/3 of all global seafood consumption and demand. And the demand that's continuing to grow is especially noticeable for species that we can't easily farm. So this is especially important if you look at species like tuna or eel, for example, species that we find quite interesting because we can't easily farm them. And so it's a real challenge to figure out where we get new supply. And we could theoretically come up with aquaculture techniques for new species, right? That's always something that's possible, but it becomes more and more challenging when we have a time constraint. When we have to do that and scale this industry within 30 years to meet very rapidly growing demand, that's quite a challenge. And we can only probably do it for a handful of new species. It's unlikely that we can do it for dozens of different fish within that time frame, just given past history. So we think that there needs to be some thought into what else could be possible. What might be a more climate resilient local production system look like? And this is really the core question that we sit around, right? Is if we can't easily grow more of the fish we need, we can't fish more of them out of the ocean, where do we get the fish? But I would propose that we actually look at this question a little bit differently. Instead of thinking about where we get the whole fish, maybe think about this in a different frame, which is what if we could produce the fish meat without having to grow the whole fish? And that's really the basis for cultivated seafood, cell-cultured seafood, lab-grown seafood, depending on what you may have heard this production technology called. And the premise is essentially that we can start with some common inputs. So we can start with a growth serum, which is something that my company is developing at Umami Meats. You work on cell lines that are actually taken from different fish. So you could have an eel cell line, a tuna cell line, a grouper cell line. And these cell lines contain all the genetic information in the fish, right? So they actually help impart natural flavor and natural nutrition that comes from these fish, and you end up with different seafood that comes from these different cell lines. And you put those into a bioreactor along with some salts and sugars and things that the cells need to grow. And then you're able to actually produce a large amount of fish cells. But fish cells are not yet fish fillets or fish products, right? You need to actually do some 3D structuring to make that end product. And so this sort of end-to-end process of starting with the raw materials, growing the cells in bioreactors, and then structuring them into an end consumer product, this all constitutes cell-cultured seafood. And I would argue that cell-cultured seafood has the potential to be even more versatile than a traditional fish, because you can easily construct it into everything you could typically make from a traditional fish, with the exception of a whole steamed fish where you need the actual fish head on with the skin and everything. But you could produce high-end products, right? So you could produce a sushi or a surimi. You could produce fish fillets or fish steaks from meatier kind of swordfish and similar. And you could supplement the fish that goes into things like pet food, where cat food and dog food actually consume a large amount of the protein demand globally. But then you could actually even make potentially more affordable options that can increase the versatility for flexitarians and other consumers. So you could make a hybrid plant-based fish that contains the cells that provide the omega-3 and provide some of the nutrition. And so you could actually create these new options for consumers beyond what you could traditionally create with typical seafood. And the idea is that you could make fish that's better for us as individuals and better for the oceans and our ecosystems. One of the biggest challenges to sustainable seafood today is that you have to grow the fish, especially pre-on-land RAS. Most fish are grown in the sea and then or caught in the sea and then transported somewhere. A lot of fish are transported live, and that involves a lot of fish and a lot of water getting put on airplanes and shipped all over the world. And these supply chains can be quite long and contribute a substantial amount of carbon emissions. You can think about trying to ship your favorite turbot or your favorite other fish to a fresh market, to a restaurant in New York, and that fish is caught in Australia, right? Or it's raised on a farm in Japan. And so these sorts of supply chains are not really conducive to a lower carbon seafood future. Ideally, we want to be able to localize production as much as possible. And localizing production can actually help us make our food system more resilient to disruptions that come from things like COVID. One of the biggest disruptions from COVID was in supply chains, and that disruption is still being felt today in many ways. So the ability to localize food production helps to reduce the risk. Especially, I remember the first couple of months of the serious COVID discussions here in Singapore was about how so much of our food is imported. And what would happen if the countries we get our food from need to prioritize local capacity? Are we going to have to be, how is the government supposed to manage those kinds of risks, right? And I think having more production locally that is a little bit more resilient to these disruptions is a major benefit. Another benefit is that we could potentially reduce the carbon emissions of production itself. Aquaculture tends to be a little bit more carbon intensive than wild catch, just because of all the energy going into things like aerators, monitoring food production, feed production, processing, all of that. But with cell cultured fish, there's a potential to actually have production be 100% renewable powered, right? Or to locate production capacity in places where the energy system is much more renewable based. And so you have the ability to actually adjust what your energy blend looks like to make it as efficient as possible. And for the oceans, I think the real benefit is we can allow wild fisheries to recover and thrive, right? We're not talking about just sustaining them at current minimalist levels, but imagine the oceans 200 years ago, before we industrially fished them, and imagine the biodiversity that existed in the oceans and how healthy those ecosystems were. And the ability to produce seafood that is not produced in the oceans will allow us to hopefully make these systems more sustainable for the oceans. And so when we think about what fish are good choices for something like a cell-cultured product or cell culture technology, I start fundamentally by saying we can't easily farm them, because in many ways, farming of fish can be more sustainable than the wild catch, particularly for certain kinds of farming. And so really what we want to tackle first is fish that are currently on the red list or on a seafood watch list, saying basically that we're overfishing these fisheries, they're near collapse, and that the fish can't easily be farmed. So you put those two things together and you say, basically we have a supply problem, right? And then on the other side, if there's growing consumer demand, and we have substantial interest from consumers to continue buying this fish if we can make it available. And so we have a short list of species where we think that's particularly relevant. Things like Japanese eel, where most eels today we actually can't close the life cycle on eel yet. And so because of that, we end up actually catching them out of rivers during spawning season, transporting them to farms where they're ranched. But obviously ranching is not fully sustainable because you're still depleting wild populations to get these fish. Other priority species would include things like yellowfin tuna, red snapper, flatfish, including halibut, and even grouper, which while grouper and some forms of grouper are actually farm raised here, many grouper populations worldwide are under threat because most of the grouper globally is actually caught, not farmed. So we think these are the kinds of species where it makes a lot of sense to prioritize a cell cultured approach. And notice we're not looking at something like salmon, where aquaculture has actually become very efficient at producing salmon. And we're not looking at things like barramundi for the same reason. And the thinking here is to help supplement what aquaculture can do to grow the amount of fish we can produce to feed the world sustainably. But one of the biggest challenges really with cell culture seafood and meats in general is that the cost structure is still in the early days. It's like solar 15 years ago. There's a lot of work to be done to bring the cost down. The very first cell cultured burger that was made cost $300,000 for a single burger. If you use pharmaceutical grade ingredients today, it looks like about $20,000 per kg, right? That's a pretty insane cost. That'd be like paying beluga caviar prices for all of your fish. Most of the companies in the industry are moving toward a couple of $1,000s per kg, which puts them, it's like buying silver instead of buying fish. But we think, based on our cost models, that at pilot scale production, about $70 per kg is pretty feasible, and that at full scale commercial production, producing tons per month out of a facility, that you're looking at less than $50 per kg within the next 4 to 5 years. And I think at those kind of price points, many types of seafood start to become really appealing for a cell cultured product. Most premium fish can be fit into that $40 to $50 per kg price range. And the long-term optimization and large scale benefits, scale up benefits, we think will put pricing within the $10 to $15 per kg range. We don't have an exact date for that sort of time reference, but we think that's feasible with this technology in the long run. And so in the long term, it might actually be possible to make seafood more affordable around the world, as opposed to having to focus on mid to upper tier kind of seafood products. And seafood is a massive market, right? So 1 in 3 people on the planet rely on seafood as a primary source of protein. That market is about 200 billion globally. And there are projections from a number of groups suggesting that cell culture could actually take about 30% of the market in the very long term, but within the decade actually achieve about 10% by 2030, which would put it at about 19 to 20 billion. And of the species that I mentioned, if we take just a couple of them and say, make a cell-based eel, red snapper, and tuna, which are things that we're working on at Umami Meats, there's a sort of $4 billion worth of that kind of seafood that there's demand for globally. So there's a real interest, I think, in figuring out what the initial foothold is and proving that this technology can help to create a more sustainable seafood capacity. So I'm always happy to chat more about making our food system more sustainable, what we can do to help protect the oceans while we produce more fish to feed the world. So I'd love to have people reach out and chat afterwards, and happy to take questions now.
Right, thanks, Mihir. There's a question in the 2 questions actually in the Q&A box. So the first one, which I accidentally answered in some way, I understand that cell cultured meats utilize the same supply chain and raw materials as biofermentation for biologics manufacturing and can often be costly. How do you foresee this technology scaling commercially?
So I would say, so we talk with a number of vendors, and if you go talk to a company like Merck that provides a lot of biopharma solutions today, right? Many of them are aware that the supply chain needs to look different. And I think that most of the companies in this space have the same mindset, that the supply chain needs to look different for a food company than it does for biopharma. And that means sourcing food grade materials instead of pharmaceutical grade for the cell culture media. But it also means potentially redesigning infrastructure in the long term to be more well suited for the cell culture needs of a food product, right? In the early days, we're certainly going to be using probably the bioreactors that biopharma uses, but hopefully food grade inputs. In the long term, I think we'll actually see food grade bioreactors and very similar kinds of technologies emerge that are specialized for this sector that help bring costs down.
All right, thanks, Mihir. So again, there's another question from Dr. Chia Buntat. To rephrase the question as follows: cell culture meat is expensive. Your target to achieve commerciability within 4 to 5 years. What breakthroughs need to happen?
So there's a couple, and I would say, we're targeting a commercial release actually earlier than that. But I think the biggest thing is picking the right end products, right? If you're trying to compete with a minced product that goes for $2 to $3 or $4 per kg, that's a very tough commercial sell early on. If you're competing with something that's relatively premium, and you're talking about a consumer is used to paying $60 per kg and you're asking them to pay $70, $75, that might be a premium you can actually enter the market with, right? Some people will buy it for different reasons, and you can make that work. But in general, the biggest things that need to happen is really scaling of the supply chain. So for example, if you buy in growth factors today, They're quite expensive because they're produced in small batches. But there are a number of companies now looking at producing growth factors via novel means. And we've already seen cost reductions of 500-fold or more in the last year. So I think many of these things just need to be adapted for a new application, right? And not have the constraints of pharma placed on them.
So we have actually 3 questions, and I think after that we could move on quickly to the next speaker. So the next one is about positioning. Will cultivated seafood be premium, mass market?
Yeah, I mean, I think definitely initially there's going to be some premium, right? But I think if we look at the species we're targeting, things like eel and yellowfin, this is not beluga caviar, right? It's not very high-end bluefin that only a few people can afford. These are premium, but still within the high end of the mass market. And I would say in the long term, the goal is to really be mass market, to target things like grouper and snapper that are kind of staples, right? They're not the cheapest fish on the market by any means, but they are highly consumed.
And I think the next 2 questions can probably be taken together. The one on allergens, about potential allergens, and there's a question in the chat which is similar to the one in the Q&A box as well about consumer acceptance. So maybe on allergens first, Mihir.
Yeah. So allergens is an interesting area because I think fish allergies are different from many other types. They tend to actually emerge after consuming fish over time. It's not as many people have fish allergies when they're born as much as sort of people develop intolerance, right? And so there's it's a difficult thing to answer because also it depends on how the fish is prepped, how it's stored. I think we'll have to see. We expect it'll probably be similar to traditional fish in terms of allergenicity, but it's possible that we could actually develop fish that are allergen free in the long term. We could actually develop these kind of specialized prescription fish, if you will, that can help people who can't eat it be able to consume it. But I think definitely there's some benefits that are not allergens per se, but things like microplastics, mercury, and other heavy metals, these kinds of things that end up in the fish because of they're in the oceans. We can avoid some of those issues. And I think that actually, toward the consumer acceptance, will be a major driver, right? Is pregnant women could actually eat cell cultured fish because there's no risk of heavy metal contamination. Or the endocrine disruption from eating plastics. So I think these are definite potential benefits.
And maybe we could group the last 2 questions on consumer acceptance, Mihir. So in the chat as well as in the Q&A box. So is there any information, number 1, on consumer acceptance and your thoughts on consumer perception of cell cultured food, its trends, and so on?
Yeah. So I think, unfortunately, the data is far less robust across the Asian markets compared to the US and Europe, where most of the consumer studies have been done so far. Shock Meats has done their own internal validation for their cell cultured shrimp and similar. And they said, like in Singapore, their reports say that 78% of consumers would want to try it at least once. Right. But I think we need to do more work to understand what concerns there might be in the Asian consumer mindsets and whether they're uniform or whether they're different country to country within Asia. But I think food security and food sovereignty are major concerns in certain countries. And I think those will be drivers of acceptance, being able to eat a local product. I think health is obviously a conversation a lot of people have around food selection here in Asia. And I think it tends to be even more prominent, I've noticed, than in the US. And then I think we're seeing a growing environmental consciousness movement as well around food. It's not sort of as advanced as it might be, say, in Europe, but I think it's growing more mature here. And as that happens, I think there'll be more and more people looking for kind of low carbon foods and sustainable foods specifically.
Okay, thanks, Mihir. So I think we should move on to the next speaker for today. So let me just introduce to you our third speaker. Today is Mr. Henry Wong. And Henry graduated from UPM in Malaysia with an aquaculture degree and obtained his master's from Australia. He has had more than 20 years of experience serving Asia's animal nutrition industry market. He has been based in China, Singapore, and Indonesia to manage the animal nutrition and health business in Asia. He joined Alltech in 2013 as Regional General Manager covering Malaysia, Indonesia, and Singapore, and provides technical support for aquaculture operations in China and Southeast Asia as well. In 2018, Henry accepted a role as Asia Commercial Director to develop the aqua business in Asia. So I believe Henry will be speaking on aquaculture, feed and nutrition from a sustainability perspective today. So Henry, please.
Okay. Can you hear? Can you see my slides? Okay. Okay. Greeting to all. I would like to thank the organizer committee for inviting me to speak at this webinar. I'm Henry. I'm the Asia Commercial Development Director for Alltech. My sharing today is aquaculture feed and nutrition from a sustainability perspective. Kindly allow me to spend 1 minute to introduce who we are and what we do. Okay, and Alltech is a global animal nutrition and health company. Currently, we have 2 companies producing aquafeed globally. The upper right is our Alltech Coppens facility, producing the extruder fish feed to support global is in Europe. And below is our Guabi aquafeed facility in Brazil. Besides that, we also supported the feed industry and farmers with various feed additive technology. Our president, Dr. Mark Lyons, has announced a sustainability-focused visions for the company that is Planet of Plenty. We are inspired by the great challenge the world has presented us to produce safe and nutritious food for all while caring for our animals and sustaining our land, air, and water for the future generations. Our natural resources may be finite, but our human ingenuity is infinite. I would like to bring you to the attention of our Alltech Global Feed Survey. We publish this survey report every year to update the industry, the landscape of the animal feed industry, including the feed volume per species, by regions, and the numbers of feed mills and global trend as well. Let's look at the data from this global feed survey on the aquaculture feed productions by regions. Obviously, the Asia is the leading regions in producing this aquaculture feed globally. Overall, we have seen that the aquaculture feed has grown from 48 million tons to 49.4 million tons, about 3% growth recorded. Latin America recorded the highest growth percentage, were mainly driven by Brazil and Ecuador. So let's deep dive into the top 10 countries in producing aquafeed. China is the largest feed producing for aquafeed. It's produced about 22 million tons of aquafeed in year 2020, and followed by Vietnam and India. And these top 10 countries represented 80% of the global aquaculture feed productions. And 6 of the countries actually from Asia, and 3 of them come from the Southeast Asia. So as the demand for aquafeed keeps increasing, unfortunately, the supply of the core ingredients such as the fish meals and fish oil remains stagnant. It means that in the aquafeed industry, producer have to look for alternative ingredient to substitute or replace the fish meal with other sources. The green line showing that the inclusion rate in the early days of 2000s or 2010s, so about 5 to 6%, has been decreased to less than 2 or 3% in maybe year 2020 or 2050. The industry experts are aggressively researching the alternative ingredients to substitute the fish meals. There could be many options, but generally can be classified under 4 groups: the plant-based proteins, the vertebrate proteins, the single-cell proteins, invertebrate proteins such as insect meals. The nutritionists understand the choice of those alternative proteins, not only based on the nutritional profile. They also need to consider the economic and also the market factors. For example, like insect meals is like black soldier fly is a good source of protein with a good nutrition profile. However, the price still remains very high. And we can see that the aquafeed nutrition technology has been keep evolving. In the past, we focused on the ingredient approach. Okay, and now we are better understanding the nutrition and fish requirements. We can formulate the fish diet towards the digestible protein, amino acid profile, EP, and DHA requirements. In the future, I would say currently, people are looking at the precision formulation technology, sustainability, and also microbiome. Let me walk you through some of the innovations and technology that Alltech has contributed to the sustainable aquafeed. This picture is our Alltech Coppens Research Center in Netherlands, and we have our 4 pillars of nutrition in all our technology innovations. Okay, we talk about P for palatability. The feed must be palatable to the fish or shrimp, and another P stands for pollutions. The feed must reduce. Okay, try to minimize and keep the good water quality. And performance is essential because you want to fish to grow at their genetic potential. And planet, we need to take account of the sustainability. And many players are still using this digestible energy in their formulation technology. But Alltech Coppens has taken one step further by moving from digestible energy formulations to the net energy formulation, which is considered precision formulations, which the net energy formulation technique, we can ensure the energy value of and performance. We do not only neutralize those variations in the raw material, but we focus on the differences in the efficiency of the different micronutrients. In 2021, we have achieved another new milestone by scoring our aquafeed according to the Sustainable Feed Index. With the data obtained from the Global Feed Life Cycle Institute, GFLI, different feed can be categorized according to their impact on various factors such as climate change, eutrophication, and etc. Assessing how this feed is produced, how much of each raw material or ingredients used in those feeds, and its supplier geographical locations allow us to classify those aquafeed according to Sustainable Index A, B, and C. A is the most sustainable feed, and B and C is the feed with a lower sustainable score. And we are not only using this kind of index to drive our internal improvement. In fact, we make it transparent to all our customers so that they could have a choice to select the aquafeed according to their commitment to the sustainability. The right-hand side of this is our product sheet. It showcases our sustainability index. So the farmer can make their own choice. Depends on what is the commitment they are. Next, I would like to bring your attention to touch on some feed additive technology that could help the aquafeed producer to produce a sustainable aquafeed. First is the enzyme technology. We know that enzymes can significantly reduce the environmental footprint. It means that we can use less oil, less phosphate, and less soybean meal that could save more arable lands and less waste and can minimize the feed cost per ton. And our unique enzyme technology is developed through the solid-state fermentations. It is a multi-enzyme solutions. It's derived from a selected strain of the Aspergillus niger. It can give flexibility to the diet by targeting different substrate while enhancing the nutrient utilizations. So these enzymes allow for flexibility in your feed formulations. You can include more byproducts or alternative raw material. Okay, so it also promotes some nutrient release, including more amino acids, energy, calcium, as phosphorus. It can optimize your feed digestibility while supporting a healthy animal gut systems and bringing cost efficiency to the operations. Next, I want to show you a recent published research paper in year 2020 that showcased the use of enzyme technology in the performance of the tilapia fed with different UK lupin meals. Okay, and it showed that proof that using enzyme SSF in the lupin diet, it can significantly improve the growth performance. Okay, in terms of the specific growth rate, weight gain, and FCR. And the enzyme treated diet also show that through the TEM, you can see that the gut have a better morphology and they have more compact microvilli compared to those control group. Next, I like to share with you another essential nutrient, which is a trace mineral. And trace mineral is important for fish health and growth. However, currently market are over fortifying those trace mineral from an inorganic source, which are very low bioavailability. And this causes more pollutions to the systems. And all that offer the industry with organic trace mineral that has this higher bioavailability. And we can replace this 100% of the inorganic source of trace mineral with organic trace minerals. So by using less amount of organic trace mineral, we can deliver a better result. A key sustainability or benefit of using total replacement technology, okay, from inorganic source to organic source, it can reduce the mineral excretions in the systems. Next, I want to show you how Alltech Mineral TRT program can help the industry reduce the trace mineral pollutions. This research was conducted in Japan in the marine fish, yellowtail, and we are looking at 3 diets. First diet, control diet, is 100% inorganic trace mineral with the industry level, very high level. And the second group actually using all that organic trace mineral at the 2/3 of the industry level. And the next group is only 1/3 of the organic trace mineral at the industry level. So, and the results show that we can improve, okay, the specific growth rate. And important thing we can notice here, the excretion for the copper, manganese, and zinc is significantly reduced compared to those the control diet group. It helps to protect our systems. Next is the gut health. Globally, there's a concern of using antibiotics to treat the fish disease or antibiotic residue in the fish productions. Alltech Gut Health Program, we offer a monooligosaccharide, which derives from a specific strain of Saccharomyces cerevisiae. It's a type of yeast cell wall to be used in the aquafeed. This moss can bind those pathogenic, pathogenic bacteria, especially those of Vibrio, Aeromonas bacteria, and remove them from the gut. And many research has proved that the fish fed with the moss diet have improved their gut structure. They can see that increase their more density of the microvilli, and the height has increased. And this lead to improved performance in terms of health conditions and also nutrient update. And the scientists has discovered that using antibiotics can disrupt the gut microbial diversity. And probiotics and prebiotics actually can help to restore the microbial diversity in the gut for aquatic animals, and that leads to the better health conditions. This slide, I want to show you the latest, one of the latest publications on Ecuador from the farm. Okay, they've taken the sample from the shrimp culture in the intensive farm system. And they found that those shrimp fed with biomass It has the more microbial diversity, and the pathogenic bacteria such as Vibrio and Aeromonas is so low and is relatively insignificant compared to those control groups. Next, I want to highlight to you about this mycotoxin aquaculture feed. As we shift from fish meal-based diet to replace more with economical plant-based diet, we face increased mycotoxin risk. The mycotoxin can cause problems in fish health and performance. And all they have a nomycotoxin.com website is that has published many articles and references related to mycotoxin threat to animals, including the aquatic animals. You can browse through this website to download the mycotoxin guideline in the aquafeed. This shows that the aquatic animals has demonstrated different sensitivity to the different level of the mycotoxins. Here, I would like to show you our result from our analysis, mycotoxins result from aquafeed and raw materials and aquafeed. We collected about 300 over samples from all regions, and we found that average of 5 mycotoxin per sample was detected. And more than 80% of the sample contain more than 2 types of mycotoxins. But the question is, so what does it mean? Will this mycotoxin cause problem to my fish? How can we quantify those risks? Okay, due to the multiple mycotoxin contamination and sensitivity variances, the author able to come up a mycotoxin risk equivalent quantity. We call it REQ. We quantify those mycotoxin risks, okay, representing the overall threat to the particular species health and performance based on the cumulative effect of the group of mycotoxin present in the samples. And based on these 300 samples, we can see 26 of the sample has shown that if you use it for tilapia feed, you're going to have 26% very high risk to the tilapia, 53% very high risk to the shrimp. In a recent publications in the mycotoxin risk to the marine fish published in 2020, we have demonstrated by using our technology is cell wall extract as a mycotoxin binder, able to show effectiveness to mitigate those risks to the animals. Lastly, I would like to summarize my presentation in a few key take-home messages. Aquaculture no doubt has the greatest potential to shape the future of our planet, and we need to work together for Planet Plenty. We want to build a sustainable future for aquaculture. And aquaculture feed definitely can play a critical role in sustainable aquaculture. And sustainable aquafeed can be achieved by applying science and technology, including the precisions in nutrition, formulation technology, enzyme technology, total replacement technology in trace mineral, enhance gut health with prebiotics, and mitigate your mycotoxin risk by using this technology. With that, I end my presentations. Thank you very much. If you have questions, we open the floor for question and answer. And there's my email. Yeah, thank you very much.
Thanks, Henry. There's a question in the Q&A box. So do you foresee any issues with the digestibility of alternate proteins, and how will it contribute to feed waste?
Definitely, different raw material have different digestibility to different kind of species. Okay, so definitely, if something cannot be utilized, it will contribute to the feed waste. Okay, there is some very principal concept. But looking at current situations, most of the alternate ingredient in the group of single cell protein and also insect proteins, okay, they are more digestible to certain kind of species. However, the price is still very, very high. So people are now using more economical, and we call it feasible sources. That is the plant-based raw material. However, there are many anti-nutrition factors, okay, and may not easily accept and digestible by some of the certain fish. Therefore, enzyme technology really works well in this in these elements. Okay, we need to unlocking those potential by using enzymes. It can release more amino acid. It can release more phosphorus from the system, especially related to the plant-based protein.
Thanks, Henry. There's another question. Actually, two more questions. One in the Q&A box and another in the chat box. But maybe we'll take the one on near-infrared technology from PCU. Have you used near-infrared spectroscopy technology for quick quality assessment?
Yeah, we do use in our facility in Krabi and also in Coppens. There's a quick and also can warranty our consistent product quality.
Okay, Okay, thanks, Henry. So, and I think maybe the last question in the chat box this time is Mannan oligosaccharide from yeast a type of probiotic or prebiotic? And do you see this probiotic space being important for help against vaccines and antibiotics usage?
This Mannan oligosaccharide actually derives from the yeast cell wall. Is considered a prebiotic. It's not a probiotic. It's a prebiotics. Okay, and we have seen that by using prebiotics, okay, it can also modulate the immune system. Some of the trial has been proven that after the fish have been fed with this moss inclusions diet, their reactions to the vaccine is quicker. That means they can develop the antibody faster compared those who fish is not fed with those with inclusions of moss. So I would say that this really helps. It works together very well with vaccines. These things to quickly help the fish to develop this kind of antibody against those diseases.
Okay, thanks, Henry. And maybe the last question from Norman, again, it's just to the panelists, but is it possible to mix dried microalgae? I'll just type it in the chat so everyone can see the question together to make a complete fish feed.
So we did produce our microalgae. Is specifically targeted for the to replace some of the fish oil. We have a very high DHA and DHA content. Yeah, we have in a dry powder form. Okay, it's for microalgae. Okay, so that is possible. But however, what I call that the price is still the acceptance of the. We are seeing that more people accept this kind of technology. However, the price still at a very high side with a more industry player. Willing and maybe at one point of time the fish oil is considered super expensive, and the people I will see that the trend of people adopting this algae oil, okay, in the aquafeed is feasible. I'm quite optimistic of this algae technology for replacing some of this fish oil in the diet. Yeah.
Okay, thanks, Henry. Thank you very much for that interesting talk on aquaculture feed. So our fourth speaker and the last speaker before a short break is my good collaborator, Itziang, Tung Itziang. It is director at RAS Aquaculture. He actually comes from the petrochemical industry, and he has a MSc from Imperial College, and he did his bachelor's in Singapore. He has worked with Schlumberger as a field engineer in many complex environments, including UAE, Angola, and so on. And he's very experienced in complete turnkey design, integration, and the operation of bespoke RAS systems, and is also very adept in aquaculture, wastewater treatment, design, integration, and operations. So it has consulted and trained more than 1,000 clients in the aquaculture sector, equipping them with various technical and marketing techniques. And he's also been awarded up to 1 million Singapore dollars in research grants for RAS technology and biofloc technology in partnership with some of the IHLs here. So it will be speaking on COVID-19 and its impact on the aquaculture landscape in Malaysia.
All right, so thanks, Mark, for the kind introduction, and thanks again for NYP for inviting us for this session. So my name is Yip, and I'm the CEO of RAS Aquaculture. So for today's topic, a little bit of overlap between what was presented by Richard and Henry. So it's a little bit on our experience in navigating our businesses throughout COVID-19 in Malaysia and some afterthoughts on how we have managed the situation. Coming from a perspective from a farmer, a seafood distributor, F&B retail, and from an end consumer. So one of the reasons why I think our company did fairly well throughout this period is we were able to look at, from a consumer's point of view, what do they really require in terms of satisfaction or having consumptions. So just some background about us. I know RS Aquaculture mainly is involved in aquaculture technology. So we develop a lot of RAS biofloc system. And we do consult clients in design, turnkey, commissioning. But for us, we also operate semi-commercial and commercial farms for mud crab, shrimps, and tilapia. And I'll share a bit of perspective on operating them nowadays in the COVID season. And I'll also share with you some of our highlights in our trading and distribution business, where we trade mud crab, shrimps, tilapia, and on addition, we do trade marble goby as well, which is commonly known as sun hog in Singapore and Malaysia. All right, so let me just start off with from a perspective of a farmer. So our point of view. So before COVID-19, basically how we were running our farms is to time our harvest for festivals like Chinese New Year, Mother's Day, Mooncake Festival that recently just passed. But what has been really difficult for this past 2 years is trying to predict the market, especially during the COVID-19 period, because looking at we face a lot of uncertainty beyond the 2 to 3 months horizon, right? So we can't really forecast what's the yield like, not what's the yield like, but what's the sales going to be and what's the demand going to be. And that really affects our production cost in terms of stocking density, which was previously shared by Richard as well. So just to share with you, this is how I'll share the shrimp business first. For our shrimp business, we actually run an indoor shrimp facility. We've been doing this for about 2 years. For our shrimp farming systems, it's a biofloc system, and we were able to culture shrimps at varying density. So the ones that we normally do is a very high density, about 500 shrimps at 1 gram body weight, stocked per cubic meter of water. And nowadays we also go into the lower stocking range, which is about 200 shrimps per cubic meter of water. So the graph on the top right actually shows the typical growth rate of our shrimps within the 90-day period, where we start off from 1 gram all the way to 27 grams, assuming an FCR 1.3 and a duration of 90 days. So the chart below actually gives us the biomass per cubic meter. That means how many kilo of shrimps do I have per cubic meter of water. So you can see the green line shows that if I stock my shrimps at 200 shrimps per cubic meter, assuming a mortality of 10 to 11%, I get about 5 kilograms at the end of the culture cycle of 90 days, which is what you see over here, right? But if I stock them at 500, you will see that I'll exceed 5 kilograms once I touch about 55 days, and all the way going to 90 days, we actually touched on to 10 kilograms per cubic meter. So that's really high yield in terms of stocking density, right? So if we look at our shrimp farming system, often we try to figure out what is our carrying capacity. So carrying capacity is really defined as how much shrimp you are able to sort of sustain in every cubic meter of water, especially if you're looking at a very high intensity system. And that number often depends on what sort of culture system you're using, whether is it a biofloc system, an open pond system, or is it a RAS system, right? And or more than often, it depends also on the type of aeration you're using, whether you're using pure air, or is it pure oxygen, or are you using some form of mechanical mixing like paddle wheels or jet aeration. So for us, what we tend to do in our high intensity farms where we are stocking a very high intensity is once we exceed a certain carrying capacity, let's say 5 kilograms per cubic meter, we will either have to fully harvest or pump in pure oxygen so that we can maintain that kind of capacity, right? So that's one way of doing it. That's commonly done in a lot of high intensity farms. But what we could also do is to partially harvest them at certain points in the culture cycle, so that we sort of reduce the culture capacity in the system. All right, so we can see on the chart over the right, we basically harvest 2 to 3 times per culture cycle, so that we bring down the total capacity down to less than 5, and we let it grow again, harvest, and let it grow away again up to the 90-day cycle where we fully harvest. So one of the problems we extensively face during COVID is due to the closure of a lot of restaurants, we were not able to harvest at this designated point that we initially planned. So that, of course, will translate into a higher SCR. And, to sustain that kind of capacity, we have to pump in either pure oxygen or increase aeration, which will increase our production costs. And definitely lengthening the culture cycle will also increase our labor and a lot of our fixed overhead. So there's some part of the impact on, the COVID-19 on our harvesting and stocking planning. But we're sure that it will be soonly improve as our restaurants start to reopen up. What about our other farms? How is tilapia doing in comparison to our shrimp farm? So for tilapia, we are actually using an open pond concept where we have actually dug mud ponds, which looks like this. And this is a picture of when we started excavating the mud pond. And this is a picture on the ones you see over here is how it looks like after the first or the second culture cycle. So we actually grow our fries from, stock our ponds with tilapia that is about 3 to 4 inches. Up to marketable size of different range. So for us, we do grade A, which is about 600 grams, which historically did not fetch a lot of demand throughout the pandemic. Very poor demand. Sometimes you get negative margins on this item. Grade B, which is 4 to 600 grams, in the pandemic have done pretty well. Very good demand, very good margins as well. Grade C, which is 250 grams to 400 grams, fetches good demand, but not really great margins. So just to understand a little bit on our systems. So I've just presented you with some of the numbers a typical farmer like us would have faced while culturing tilapia. So you can assume that each farmer will own about an acre of land. And from this acre of land, they're able to fetch about a revenue about 19,000 Sing dollars, right? But the cost it takes them for feed and fries alone will amount to about 15,000 Sing. So effectively, they're only making about 3,000 to 4,000 Sing dollars throughout a period cycle of 4 months. And this is excluding manpower, utilities, chemicals, probiotics, prebiotics, feed additives. So obviously, you can see that the margins are really, really tight for the tilapia farmers nowadays. This is down there, you see a picture here to illustrate a point. Pre-COVID, we used to have lorries coming into our farm picking up live fish, grade A, using lorries, and they're all equipped with generator and aeration system to sustain our live fish until they get to the restaurants. But nowadays, getting distributors to come down to your farm to collect fish, they will probably come down in their single cap Hilux and just drive chilled products, which are typically in the grade C range, 250 to 400 grams. So what's some of the impact on this smallholder is really financing the feed. So you can look at the numbers, you can really realize, the pinch is really taking on to the smallholders, right? They really have to, most of the time, they do not have the finances to sustain or to delay harvesting and wait for better price. And you can see that one bad crop would actually wipe out all the gains from the 2 to 3 cycles gained previously. So it's not surprising that most of the farmers nowadays will try to sell them off to recoup some capital. And this actually forms what we call a vicious cycle by continuously pushing the prices down, right? Another impact on, apart from production costs, is there are, when you farm tilapia in ponds, what tends to happen is tilapia tends to breed in ponds, and the fish tends to mature at a very young age in the range of 250 to 300 rand, which causes a lot of problem in terms of increasing SCR, right? So apart from increasing production costs, what we see in Malaysia nowadays is due to the relatively low entry barrier and a lot of people losing their jobs in other sector. Everybody's a fish farmer nowadays, yeah. So everybody's doing their own small scale RAS behind their backyard. But honestly, in terms of profitability, still remains a concern for most of them. So for most of them, they tend to buy fish fries that are sold very cheaply from the internet, Facebook, and this causes a lot of problems down the line, either by early maturation, etc. For us, we're actually using a very fast hybrid. Although monosex technology has been around, but while in Malaysia, the growth is still not as good as our fast hybrid. So combined with high feed costs in the range of in the year 2020 to 2021, our margins were actually further eroded. So one thing that we did well, I think, luckily, was to manage to meet all tech. So this is unplanned, the presentation from Henry and my side. So what we did is to convert a lot of our grower feed into what we call economical feed, which was actually designed to sustain as a means to sustain the tilapia weight instead of growing it. And what we did is to use a lot of all tech technology like enzymes to sort of apply it to our economical feed, which we know has a lot of plant material. So that actually improved some of our economics and was able to sustain the business throughout this period. So moving on to our third species, mud crab. Luckily for mud crab, our turnover period is relatively short because we are doing fattening. So it's easier to read the market in terms of festive season, reopening of restaurants. So for our side, it was pretty much business as usual, but we just have to sort of beware of mortalities and accidental modes for our crab farms. So that's what we face, from a farming point of view. And I'll just move on to some of the distribution side of the business. So, as a farmer, when I call distributors to come down to my farm to collect my fish and shrimp, they always tell me, hey, I'm too busy this month, there's not a lot of sales. You'll probably try to call me next month. So that was the catchphrase for this past 2 years. And I'll share a little bit of experience in this business. So for mud crabs, the 2021 price actually recovered from the 2018. So we've seen a slightly price increase from 2018. To be honest, these 2 years, I don't see a huge volume reduction for crabs. It wasn't as bad as shrimp or fish. But as from the distribution side, we face a lot of competitions. This is because crab could be actually transported dry, right? So you don't need any tanks to hold them in to keep them alive while you transport them to the end consumer. You can just pack them in styrofoam boxes. So a lot of these guys that are not, who lost their job in other sectors started to be crab traders, right? So a good comparison is the car like Suzuki Swift can easily pick up to 120 kilograms of crab a day, right? So that amounts to about 3,000 in terms of sales every day. So it's much better than trying to be a Grab driver, for example, right? So a lot of people in this sector are moving into this. And what we see in the crab industry is basically these traders without any fattening facility or holding facility are flooding the market with a lot of unsorted, cheap and high mortality products. So, but when restaurants ask for discount, it's really hard to justify quality based on price. So that's something you have to educate your consumers. Another emerging phenomena I start to see in Malaysia is the usage of things like Facebook Live. So basically, we have people that are trying to sell crabs using like a Facebook platform. They'll aggregate orders tonight through their Facebook, and they will place an order in to import in from either Indonesia or Sabah or, for example, Sri Lanka or Philippines. So basically, this has actually a huge impact on how crabs are actually distributed and stored, because all previously suppliers were relying on the JIC model, which is just in case model, to a just in time model, right? So nowadays, FB Live traders do not have to stock a lot of inventory. They just have to buy and trade, and as long as that margin is preserved, they can make a profit. It is estimated over 2,000 FB Live is conducted every day in Malaysia due to the ease of the technology. And I'm still trying to see what's the impact on this industry as we move along post-pandemic. But one important point to note is, yes, they are able to take orders and sell, but most of them still have to figure out logistics because Malaysia is still quite big and sparse at the moment. While we are talking about crabs, let's move into shrimps. Generally, I see shrimp, there's a farm gate reduction in prices, about 2 to 3 ringgit per kilogram. In the live market, where we sell live shrimps to restaurants, there's been really slow to no demand. This is because most of the restaurants have actually switched to use frozen products, either imported from Indonesia or Vietnam, either head-on, shell-on, or peeled, to improve their margins of the business, right? Live shrimps were also very popular before the pandemic for use as fishing spots, typically in the size of 10 to 11 gram, which is about 100 counts. These are also being affected, right? So what I see farmers tend to do is they try to bypass the distributors, right, to practice what we call farm to fork concept. A lot of farmers will try to sell their products on platforms like Shopee, which includes delivery, but at the moment they are still not able to cover a wide range. So typically they're concentrated in areas in KL, PJ, Klang. I don't see a lot of movements on e-commerce platforms in the southern part of Malaysia or the northern part. It's very centralized in KL. And a lot of big players like CP are also going into the frozen segment, where they're targeting a lot of B2C consumer. But the logistics is still difficult to manage. Even though you can buy off Shopee today, you'll not probably get them after 4 to 5 days. In this sector, I don't see a lot of people competing in the live shrimp industry because transporting shrimp is still relatively tricky. It's not as easy as crabs. So it's pretty reserved for those who have, lorries or infrastructure that can manage this kind of transportation. By all of our products, the worstly hit was actually tilapia, really badly affected in terms of trading. So really very bad demand for grade A tilapia, which is table-sized tilapia in the range of 600 grams above. Last year, grade C product, which is in the range of 250 grams to 400 grams, was still doing better. But this year, demand remains poor because essentially it's really hard to tilapia as a product. It's really hard to compete. If you're competing frozen whole round, we can't really compete with hybrid grouper, which are also suffering at the moment. If I compare the fillet market, price wise, it's not really attractive comparing to, for example, salmon. And if I compare it at the lower range chilled, I can't really compete with pangasus, which is catfish or patin. So at the end of the day, I think we have to really look at what does consumer really want to consume or throughout the season, right? So here's a typical illustration of what do we used to order before the pandemic. We order the fish, maybe some drunken prawns and the crabs. But nowadays with the pandemic, everybody is forced to stay in, and your typical scenario will probably be something like, it's Father's Day, Mooncake Festival, we're not allowed to go out, a family of 4. And unfortunately, I'm not a great cook, so I'm just an average a guy with cooking abilities. Of course, finances are tight. So obviously, if fish, the demand for steamed fish is probably gone. But for shrimps, most of them will tend to buy it themselves and cook it. And for crabs, it's something they will probably order in advance, right? So there have been a lot of reports nowadays saying that there have been a lot of people who can't afford mutton, chicken, or fish and be switching to eggs. I agree in some sense. But most importantly, we have to think about the consumer and what they can afford and what in terms of convenience in preparing the ingredient and how does it fit in their overall planning. Opportunity for change. Nowadays, we work very closely with restaurants. Instead of a GIC model, which I previously highlighted on, we started to work with restaurants to take in pre-orders, and we are able to time a lot of our harvests according to their marketing campaign. So a lot of joint marketing campaigns that are working on between restaurants and people like us and also farmers. And throughout this period during the pandemic, we try to maximize as much as we can to work with the local businesses and to improve some of their marketing strategy in terms of branding. So here's a video of them trying to explain to some of their consumers, what this crab looks like and where is it farmed and how, what goes into farming it and why is it priced in a certain manner. So that really changed. It's currently changing how local distributors and farmers are working together with local restaurants to sort of promote their products. Right. So I think that's all for my presentation. I think hopefully you've gained some perspective on how this industry is at the moment, at least in Malaysia, and hopefully you can learn a thing or two and how to apply it on your side.
Thanks, Ed. Very perceptive and insightful. I also noticed that there are quite a lot of Facebook sellers popping up all over selling crabs. Some of my friends are doing it. Yeah. Why crabs? I don't see them. Is it because it's easier to process and ship and they don't need a big freezer to store?
Yeah,
it's mainly crabs. It's mainly mud crabs.
Number one, the reason I've heard is number one is transportation. So number two, a lot of people are eyeing crabs because of the high value, right? So I had, for example, I had a chicken trader who came to me. He was saying that, in order to make 1,000 Sing dollars, I probably had to sell like 200 kilos of chicken. But nowadays, I just have to sell 20 kilos of crabs, and I'm done for 1,000. I can I can just pack up for the day. Right. So it's a couple of reasons for.
Okay, so there's an interesting question in the Q&A box. I see that your focus is on fresh and live fish, but with COVID-19, do you see pivoting into processing and value adding for the retail segment?
Good question. So traditionally, if I look at the Malaysian market, before the pandemic, it's very centralized in live or chilled product. Consumers here not really have a very good confidence for the frozen segment, right? This is because Malaysia, we do consume quite a lot of fish. Per capita average is about 56 kilogram, which is one of the top 5 highest in the world. So Malaysian consumers are really picky. Life is definitely a more premium market for us. Frozen, I think in the long run will be hard to compete with other segments or other market like Indonesia or Vietnam, which has traditional cheaper labor and lower land costs.
Okay, and perhaps the last question before we go for our break, something technical on oxygen.
Okay, yeah. So I have the question pulled up. So why do we need to supply pure oxygen? Great question. So depends on the system that you're running on. If you're running on a biofloc system, in the biofloc system, there's not only the shrimp that is going to consume oxygen, right? You also have the biofloc system, which is responsible for converting the waste into feed. And that sort of system consumes a lot of oxygen, especially if you're feeding in a lot of quantity, right? So for us, if you don't supplement with pure oxygen, it's really hard to get it up to 10 to 11 kilograms per cubic meter for biofloc system. So generally speaking, for high growth, but also for high intensity. Just to give you some perspective, typical pond operators using traditional flow through or a biofloc system would only yield about 1 to 2 kilograms per cubic meter per cycle. So doing 10 is about 5 to 10 times more in terms of yield.
Right, and thanks. And maybe a final question. I understand that your company is an education provider. So
yeah. Okay. Generally, I see a lot of people trying to invest in the aquaculture industry. So my advice is for most of them is aquaculture business is not something you do to gain profits within 1 year, right? It takes you 2 to 3 years to get your basics right, and it easily takes you a decade to see real reward. So I see a lot of people coming in from tourism, right? Aerospace sector, which I have recently unfortunately lost their jobs to the pandemic. And my advice is, to sort of look at the scale that you need to invest and be really realistic about what you're trying to do. Because more than often, like Dr. Richard just said, intensification and high technology is not the question to all your solution, right? You have to be realistic that sometimes tilapia can only sell for $2 a kilo, and that's the fact of life, right? So we have to balance that technology and business returns.
okay, thanks a lot, It. So I think it's about 3:22 now. So we'll go for about a 10-minute break and come back at 3:30 for the next segment. So thanks, everyone. A quick break. Please come back at 3:30. Thank you.
Mr. Leong, are you? Mr. Leong, are you in? No.
Hi.
You want to try to share your slides, Mr. Leong?
Sure. Let me get in now.
You should be able to share.
Yeah, share screen. You will stop screen. Do you want to continue? Yes.
Yeah. Go ahead. Is it okay?
Why is it? I can't find my
the screen.
Let me give me a minute. Let me pick out and see where is my PowerPoint. I close what is not necessary first. Let me close up. Go back to share screen. These will stop other screen sharing.
Yes, that's okay. Just go ahead.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, here I go.
Okay. Yeah, can you make the full screen?
Okay, and let me get my thing better to charge now. It shows I'm running low on battery.
Okay, yeah.
Just a minute. Everything is not charging. It won't play on me.
Is the switch open or on or?
Yeah, the switch is on.
Oh, I did that. Is it the same as your PDF that you sent to me?
I have no, it's okay. I can send one. How do I go full screen?
I just go down all the way, and there's this like next to the cursor, next to the raise hand one. There's this button like square for full presentation. Above the raise hand.
Above the raise hand, where is it?
Lower down. Lower some more. Where's your cursor?
Where is my cursor?
Yeah.
Help me. I also tried to get my battery going. My battery is not charging, so strange.
Presentation mode, yeah.
Yeah.
The full screen one, yeah. Okay. Lower down. Put your cursor down all the way.
All the way.
All the way near your Q&A, lower down a bit. There's the 3 box there. The 4th box on the right. Lower some more. On the right side.
Is at the bottom right corner.
Bottom right corner.
Beside the negative sign.
Besides the besides the where you can increase the size of your PowerPoint, just next to it. Not that one. On the left side. One of the button. The other one to the right.
To the right?
No. Go back. To your far right now. The button on the far right. Yeah, that one.
This the one?
Yeah, correct.
I got it?
Yeah, I think so. Can you move your slide and see?
Okay.
Yeah, okay. Can
you?
So that's the one. Yeah. To click.
When I move, let's just try, just to be sure. I start from page 1.
Can. Should be okay. You can use your cursor or your that one, yeah. Your down button or page down or so.
Yeah. It's okay?
Yeah, looks okay. Okay,
it's okay, yeah. All right. So what now? Do I get out first and get
you get you I'll prompt you again later after the first speaker.
Okay, all right.
Okay, you can stop sharing now. Okay,
I stop sharing. Let me see. Stop share. Okay.
Okay.
Hey, Alexa, how are you? Okay. Huh?
Muted.
Hi, Mr. PT, how are you?
I'm good.
Good to see you.
Yes, nice to see you. I've been running around trying to catch up with you. Jason has been very kind. You know. So you'll be speaking next, huh?
Yeah, next, just before you.
Okay. Hey, you take as long as you want. You take as long as you want, so I can spend 10 minutes. With the approval from Jeffrey Singh and Mark.
Yeah, you can do that by asking me a lot of questions, and I'll take very long to close.
Hey, Jeffrey, thank you so much for helping out and organizing this. In the midst of COVID, all of us have to find some excuse to get out from the ruts of daily trying to figure out what to do, what best can we do to get to the market.
Yeah, correct. I thought this topic is quite interesting in a way.
Yeah, very good, very interesting.
To know what is happening everywhere, even not in Singapore as well, Malaysia also. Yeah,
that's right. Hey, Jeffrey, the lady or the gentleman supposed to link up. I haven't got time to link up. Maybe I
Who is
should
it?
write and get their contact number so I can communicate with them.
Who is that?
Remember the lady in the food tech?
Oh, Mr. Gan. Miss Gan. Miss Gan Heng Hui.
Gan.
Yeah.
Yeah. I will try to link up with Gan.
Again, you send an email first, and then you CC me.
Yeah.
Is okay. Yeah.
Right. Give me an excuse to come and see you and Joel.
Oh, okay. But now the heightened alert, all this, very difficult.
Yeah. Okay.
Again, through Zoom or whatever, it's okay. So, yeah.
All right. Yeah, maybe
Zoom
we should
first.
do that.
Yeah.
So, all right. You know what? Before Alex, let Alex go. I go and relax myself. Have a warm drink. Come back and see Alex. Okay. Alex,
Yeah.
talk to you later.
You see you.
Yeah.
Take a break first.
I'll just mute myself for a while.
Yeah, take a break.
Okay, it's actually 3:30 right now. So Jeff, would you like to?
Okay. I'm your second host. So welcome back to the second session of our webinar here. So as shown in the itinerary, we actually have two local farmers, Mr. Alex Xiao and Mr. Liao Bantat, who will be sharing later on how they do production of fish in this pandemic era in Singapore. And following that, we will be having Miss Liris from Jala Technology to share her solution to digitizing aquaculture. And then last but not least, me and Dr. Mark will be sharing on what we have done, a little bit on what CADV has done for the Singapore and even overseas. Okay, without much ado, I won't be introducing the biographies of all the speakers. You can get it off by scanning the QR code. Okay. So in the interest of time, we'll straight away jump into the session. So Mr. Alex Xiao, you can start off with your talk. Yeah, thank you. Alex, you can share your slides. Yeah.
Okay, I'm sharing my slide.
Yep.
Hi, good afternoon. I'm Alex from Opal Resources. First, thank you, NYP, for inviting me, and also thank you for all of you having me here to share. So, this is my first slide. As you can see, it's a map, right? This map is not to show you how to go to my farm. It's at the bottom right corner, right? It's to show that this is a very, very small farm, right? Local farm is a family-run kind of business model. We are not asset intensive. We are not capital intensive. We are more, I would say, skill intensive. We focus on good biosecurity. We focus on effective feed management and things like using probiotics and all those things, but not applying pure oxygen or using very expensive equipment like drum filter. In fact, I like the parting statement of the previous speaker, Ik Xiang. He said that you can have very high intensification and high costing, but at the end of the day, you can only sell your tilapia at $2 per kg. So that's a fact. Right? And before I like to give before I go further to the technical to the technology, just give a short intro of Opal Resources. Now we have two type of business, right? We actually commercialize our table-sized fish blowout last year, 2020, with species like jet perch and carriers fish and also vegetable. We are licensed by SFA for fish farming and also vegetable farming. The other business we have is a hatchery. In fact, we started our hatchery commercial business quite some time ago in the year 2014. The species are basically a freshwater species like jade perch, salt torrent tilapia, and also freshwater prawn. For some reason, we stopped the tilapia and freshwater prawn hatchery now due to some reason shifting, but it will be available early next year. We will resume with the production of this species by next year. And the okay, now as our topic today is embracing technology. So Opal basically has a combination of technology or techniques for its farming activities, including green water, RAS, aquaponic, and biofloc system. The previous speaker had mentioned some of this technology. In fact, green water itself, to some people, is not a technology. It's just a very traditional way of farming. But to us, we have some improved on it. We developed some technique to control the algae growth and to make sure the water quality is conducive to the fish without having much DO issue, without, in any of maybe green water or RS system, the same principle, the same objective is to maintain the oxygen level and also to minimize the toxicity due to ammonia or nitrate produced by the fish. So we have a combination of technologies, right? And now also what I'd like to share is that we are still it's a challenge faced by us, like many other farmers. What is a stocking density? Should we have high intensification or low, like what Isiang has said, no? So when we have too low stocking density, the farmer don't make money, right? You have high unit overhead cost, right? And when you have too high stocking density over here, you actually face higher risk like disease outbreak, risk like mortality rate. So, and this will actually drive up your unit overhead cost. So there's no cookbook method as to what technology and what stocking density. I would say is our experience is a lot of science, a lot of arts, and it's management. We have to manage because everything is very fast moving. So many variables, and the like any other business, the farmer need to manage with technologies and with various support from the worker, the skill, and also the environment that you cannot control. And okay, now I want to go through each one of the technology that we are using. Like so here you can see this is a video taken at our Opal farm. It's an RS system. Typically, RS system is suited to us to a small. Your culture area is small. Like this tank is a 5-ton tank capacity. It can contain 5-ton water, and you have a relatively high stocking density, right? So the main component of this RS system is, as many of us are aware, is this a biofilter or a bioreactor. Sorry. Yeah. So the bioreactor is basically many plastic beads. This plastic beads is a very small size, but it has a very high surface area, and the surface area is where you can find the bacteria, so-called the ammonia oxidizing bacteria that help to remove the ammonia. It actually did not remove; it actually convert the ammonia, the toxic ammonia, into not so toxic nitrate and nitrite. And this one here you can see is a so-called the green water aquaculture. Right? in here, because the algae is the one, the agent that help to remove the ammonia from the culture water. And it's basically very traditional. This is a traditional system, actually. No special technology. But to us, we have enhanced it. We have developed some technique to control the growth of the algae. So when there's too much algae, as you know, it may cause a DO problem. And when there's not enough algae, you will have ammonia problem. So it's a balancing between the how much or what's the right level of algae in the system. Now, okay, then come to the next. We also use this aquaponic techniques. So aquaponics is quite interesting. The picture here you see is one from our customer in Malaysia. We supply fly, we export fly to Malaysia. So Malaysia, you have a big space. You have this system where below is fish and on top is plant. So you have the fish waste. The fish waste serve as a useful nutrient for the plant, and in turn, the plant will help to remove the toxic waste from the fish water. So it's a synergy, fish and plant together. But in our context at Opal, we don't have such a big space for the plant, so we use aquaponic to reduce the toxic waste accumulated in the fish culture. Right, that over here you see the pandan leaf, and over here bottom is plants like basil and mint. These are fully supported by fish, 100% fish wastewater. There's no liquid fertilizer. It's all 100% fish water. And actually, plant like basil and mint actually grow very well just with fish water. So this is a graphical illustration where you have fish and plant at the same time. So, and there are cases where farmer grow as much plant as the fish, a full-fledged aquaponic. But for the Opal, in our farm, the plant we use a plant to remove the toxic waste rather than we want to grow a lot of plants. So again, having the plant is a very cost-effective way to remove the toxic waste, in our system. Okay, then we have like what Isiang has mentioned, we also adopt this technique, biofloc, right? So it's not it's basically a waste treatment system. So instead of having a biofilter in the RI system, the whole culture system is a biofilter. The biofloc in the culture system is consists of bacteria, algae, protozoa, waste material like feces, and also uneaten feed. So this biofloc function as a bioreactor, which control the water quality, and at the same time function as food for the aquatic species. Right? Obviously, this system is not suited for every kind of species. According to aquaculturists, it's best suited for tilapia and also prawn, because I think prawn they can survive with with a high concentration of solid in the water, because in biofloc system you have a solid floating throughout the culture system, so they can able to tolerate the concentration, the solid concentration, and at the same time, these species like prawn and tilapia, they can eat and digest the microbial protein found in the biofloc aggregates. Okay, this slides it actually illustrate what Opal is doing. Opal is involved in the entire growth process, right, from broodstock management up to fish processing. So we are one of the few farm in Singapore that involved in the entire growth cycle, right? So the why we do that is that we believe in biosecurity, so we don't believe in importing fly or fingering from outside sources. It may be contaminated with virus or bacteria. So the best biosecurity to work with is to have your own broodstock and your own hatchery. So as you said, one of our business is exporting fly. In fact, we export flies to countries in South Asia and also to Europe. And especially in this COVID moment, I don't know what's the reason. There's a higher demand of fish fly from us. So what reason we are not sure. But I believe that the many countries they are disrupted by the supply chain over the other side. And Singapore being a very efficient airport, we have plane, we have a flight that can go to almost many corners of this world. So for me to fly, to transport fish fly to different parts of the world is quite easy because of our good airport and our good airway system around us. So, and also you can see for the India, when we control the entire supply chain, this entire growth cycle, we are not disrupted by the COVID actually, because we control our fly and we control our schedule. Obviously, the only thing we cannot control is the import of fish feed. And this COVID actually has caused me a few times of delay in the feed. My suppliers told me that, okay, my shipment is delayed. The ship from Vietnam is delayed because there's no container box. It's not that there's no feed. The feed mill is still producing, but there's no container box. It was hold up in major port like in US or in Europe. So, in this container freight trading, you need to have a box moving up and down. If the box are stuck in one country, then even there is cargo, but there's no container box, then there's no shipment. So these are some of the disruptions that we face as a result of COVID situation. Okay, just to go further, what our produce is mainly this jade perch. Right? According to the Australian government agency, this fish somehow has shown to have a high content of omega-3. Right. So by the way, the man in this slide is my son. He's helping me. Okay, we also farm species like carriers fish. Carriers is a catfish species, African catfish. It's a very fast growth rate and a very easy fish to farm. So we also have our own fish processing facilities at the same farm site. Thanks to SFA, we are licensed to do fish processing. So this is some of our this is a tilapia fly. During 2014, we exported, or not exported, we supplied close to about even more than 1 million pieces of short orange fly to the local farmer in Singapore, mainly in the Lim Chu Kang water. Yeah,
Alex,
here is
last minute, Ken.
Okay.
Wrap up.
Okay.
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah. Okay. So this what you see here is from our customer in Changi water, growing tilapia, and this we supported them with this salt torrent fly. So we do export beside local farm. We also export fish fly like jade fly to OC. Yeah. So is there any question? I'm ready.
Thanks, Alex, for the quick sharing of your farm operations and all that. Okay, there's one question. Is from nobody. Okay, in RAS farming, what would be oxygen supply system is adapting? Do you use pure oxygen or air aeration? How do you make sure there is sufficient oxygen in the specific stocking density?
Okay, that's a good question. One of the limiting factor in RS system is oxygen. Actually, there is no rocket science, right? You just provide pure oxygen if the stocking density is too high. So we don't use pure oxygen, so we do not favor high intensity farming. We don't really go for super high intensity. That you need pure oxygen, because pure oxygen is expensive, and also what happens when you suddenly your supply of oxygen is disrupted for whatever reason, especially now COVID, then you will get into serious trouble. You will have mass mortality. So it's a very high risk kind of thing if you depend on pure oxygen. That's to us, that's how we feel. And also we are quite comfortable with optimum stocking density, where it's high enough to cover our overhead and low enough so that we don't have unnecessary risk like a disease outbreak. When you have high stocking density, there's a high tendency for disease outbreak.
Okay, thanks. There's one more question. Basically, is this related to the aquaponics one. What are some of the vegetables you've grown on using the aquaponic technique? And then does the vegetable grown using aquaponics taste as good as those grown in the normal soil?
Okay, good question. In my farm, we have both hydroponic and aquaponic. Okay, first, why we have both? So hydroponic, as you may aware, depend on liquid nutrient, chemical inorganic liquid nutrient. Actually, when we have hydroponic, the plant grows faster than aquaponic. Because in those well-formulated liquid nutrients, all the micro and macro nutrients are all available in that. If it's a good liquid nutrient, it should be all inclusive. So, but in aquaponic, we do aquaponic not so much to have a good growth or good crop harvest, but not so much that, but more to get the plant to remove the toxic waste from our fish culture. So the plant just happened to be a byproduct. So, and back to the questions of why, the tasting. Yes, I remember I watched a CNA documentary. They do a survey, plant from they try on some food tester with aquaponic. With hydroponic and with even soil culture. They found that there's no. Half of the people say this tastes better, the other half said the other one tastes better. So there's no structure. There's no different. Okay, back to the aquaponic. Aquaponic. I believe the aquaponic may not have the full range of nutrients. That's my personal understanding. So when you don't have the full range of nutrients, something may compromise. It may be even the taste. So that's my guess.
Okay, thanks for the answer. There's one from Ambadi. He says, asking how do you manage the solid waste in your RAS system?
Good question. So the RAS actually, the biofilter only help to remove the liquid, the ammonia. It doesn't help to remove the solid waste. So the solid waste is a very important job a farmer must do to make sure the water is still conducive to the fish. Obviously, you have money, you can buy a drum filter, which is expensive and also very expensive to maintain. It need a lot of power to rotate the drum, and you need water check to clear the solid from the drum. So you can go to that end where you cost will be high, and of course you can have high intensity. That's one extreme. The other extreme is what I'm doing. I don't use those expensive equipment, so I use a sedimentation system. We have some very traditional way of filtering the solid. You can have some. I can't tell you within this session, but there are techniques to do so.
Okay, just one last question. We have about 1 minute left. What is the demand of the vegetables grown using aquaponics that you have now? And do you think you can optimize it for larger scale growing?
Oh, yes. especially in our urban context, I would fully recommend hydroponics because between hydroponics and soil culture, the cycle is so much shorter with hydroponic. Right. For example, in my case, you want to plant, say, spinach. For soil culture, I may need to take 4 or 5 weeks, but with hydroponics, I can take 3 weeks, shorter growth cycle. And in hydroponics, you don't have soil bacteria, so you also don't have the issues like the weed. There's no weed. There's no weed issue in hydroponics, and this harvesting is also easier with hydroponics. So there are a lot of pro rather than con.
All right. Okay. With that, I think we have to move on to the next speaker. Thanks, Alex, again for all your sharing and your questions and answering them. Okay.
Thank you. Thank you.
You can stop sharing. Thank you. Okay. So our next speaker is Mr. Liao Bantat from CEO and founder of NRA and ACE Private Limited. So he's going to share a bit new technology on cultivating fish. Okay. So Mr. Liao, you can share your screen and then just start. I can just make it full screen again. Based on there's a button there. Next to the correct. Okay. Yep. Okay.
Okay. Sorry for going from the back up.
No problem. Okay.
Well, thank you, Jeffrey, and for inviting us, and also thanks, Alexia, for your sharing. I was given a topic by Dr. Jeffrey to speak on taking the plunge, aqua technology to create a new business opportunity. So I shall run through this presentation in this 6 section. First, to introduce ACE technology, and amidst COVID-19, what are the areas of concern and how to overcome each of these concerns. And then a little bit of our ACE milestone and why we take the plunge. And going forward, what can we do in the coastal, foreshore, near-shore farming? In ACE technology, we have 6 of these components. We want to be sea area optimization, that means growing more for less. We want to be able to consume less energy in our production. And always remembering that human resource utilization is critical, given that the labor cost is expensive and also given the limitation of labor in the COVID-19. Environmental management is what we do. Low carbon footprint is always in our mind. And how can we be more climate resilient? Given the technology, you can see the patent certificate. We have firstly obtained patent from Australia Patent Office, followed by Singapore, Cambodia, and just last week, on the 10th of September, we have got China National Intellectual Property Administration, CNIPA, giving us the patent for the equal as well in China. This is the quote and unquote from Minister Grace Fu. She had a public lecture on the 14th of May. You can just Google that and find out. I'll just roughly mention what was raised by a minister about us, that I didn't know that such a word called sustainability engineering. So engineering innovation is what ECOA is all about. It is a system that we have that can toggle between the flow through and the recirculation in the time of need. And in all time, we ensure that we clean the water before we discharge. And at all time, once the water gets pumped into the ECOA, we call it the Novus ECOA because it's a novel offshore advanced house system. When we pump the water up to the highest point on the ECOA, it goes gravitate down by its own pressure head till the discharge into the moon pool and back to the ocean treated seawater. And she said that this exemplifies the potential of fish farming that is productive and protective to the marine environment. We are a little known to the industry because I think most people do not know us. There are lots of talks about net cage improving in its protection to the environment. Argentina government have stopped net cage farming or in its totality, and I think more will come and follow suit. In ACE, we have a born global vision. We want to be able to farm local, be able to adapt to local condition, local circumstances, local environment, grow local fish. And to feed global means we are able to have the eco technology exportable to various countries in this world. Our mission is simply economical, sustainable, traceable produce. The ESG sustainability DNA is very much in ACE, and therefore we pride ourselves that our core value is grit, GRITS, where you have the guts to have to chase your dream, to have passion, and to be perseverance in all you do, to have respect for nature and others. To innovate means you continue to reinvent ourselves, to stay relevant and to be transparent and to be honest. So in it all, we say, let's ace it together. Now, I should just mention straight to the point on the topic that I was asked to speak on. In the midst of COVID-19, what is it all about? What is the impact on our industry in its larger perspective? I think the C-19 has systematically and randomly and sometimes spontaneously stalled our supply, meaning to say today the B2B restaurants are open, tomorrow is down to 2. This is Singapore, and there's a restricted movement order given in Malaysia as well. So in terms of global supply and local fish processing and its labor shortage is predominantly the call of the day. Now, in the immediate term, what are the impacts of the virus? We summarize in 3 key areas in ACE. We say these 3 key areas are the main concern. The logistical bottleneck, supply chain on its supply chain, on our production, the change in the consumer's behavior and the market accessibility, and also the affordability and also the stability in the market. We are deeply honored and privileged. On the 27th of February, we started our operation on the 19th of November. In the 4 months from the first stocking of the fingerlings, we had our first harvest. President Halima was the guest of honor, and in the speech she mentioned about this was February and March, I think mid-March, with a total lockdown. She mentioned about the logistical inconvenience in terms of COVID-19. I will just touch on the 3 main thing, on the 3 main concern, the logistical bottleneck. What is the impact on us? We have the increase in price, as all of us know, because of transportation, because of air freight, sea freight, and because of border closure, thus disrupting supply chain to farmers. And we have a very big disruptions in fingerlings when we first started. For the first 6 or 7 batches, we had inconsistency and fingerlings that are brought in with disease. And when we first harvest in February to June period, we cleared tank number 1 in 4 months because there were lack of processing facility. Then there was also lack of cold storage space. During COVID, we couldn't sell. The option is either to leave it to grow bigger. And overall, I think the global production is expected from now for the many years to come to reduce by 1.5% from the FAO report. Here show us clearly that in order to move forward, we decided that not to stay and sit on our laurel, but asking ourselves how to go forward rather than to think of way to find scaling down. We instead embraced on the road towards embarking on our post-harvest facility, which was opened November 20th November 2020 last year. Minister Grace Fu graced the occasion, and here shows her in our processing room and showing her in our nursery. The next thing with changes in a consumer's behavioral pattern, and this is very critical for all farmers who wants to be in the vertically integrated business model. We see the ready-to-eat meal becoming more and more important, like even our smoked sea bass. We also realize that on our online platform, www.acefishmarket, consumer prefer and call us, why don't we have something nearer to their home? And also, because they're cooking from home, the awareness on the protein dollar is becoming less of a concern. But what food? How does the food reach my plate? We even have consumers who tell us that, look, they want to see our freezer truck of having the whole complete cold chain before they place the order. So we deliver with them with our freezer truck, and they will come out of the house just to see that it comes off the freezer truck. Things like that create the awareness, which we are happy to hear that and happy to see that. And there is an increased demand for a non-perishable item to stock up. Because of that, we have a new product that ACE will be launching end of October. Here shows the reason why we say in our mission is to be sustainable, means we want to reduce energy usage. We want to also reduce carbon footprint. We have a total unbroken food mile fish production from all the way from eggs to the finished product, as you can see from this slide, from egg to fresh produce, all within the eco-arc. The third item is I call market accessibility. And that means it's easily accessible to them. I put OLOL, which is online. A lot of people think it's just purely online, but the accessibility also means how do they get it offline? Because of restriction in trade, travel, even moving from a long distance to the city to buy food are also restricted. The rise in the number of online transactions in a daily purchase we see clearly. However, we also see the market accessibility being bottlenecked by the shortage of delivery services. Here is an example of somewhere in early September when we had the lockdown of the Jurong Fishery Port, now the Pasir Panjang wholesale market. We will see that more of these cases, we pray that it will not, but occasionally it might spill up again, and we have to be prepared for it. Now, here I'd like to just quickly run through the third part of my presentation. Very quickly, in ACE Aqua, we are ready to take the further plunge and to respond to the post-COVID-19. To do so, here I've lined up 7 items. In the 7 item, one is we hope to address Singapore's food security of 30 by 30 vision. That means ability to provide 30% of our nutritional need by the year 2030. Now, 2030 is just around the corner, and there's only 9 years left. And the fight and the challenges to go forward is further hampered by the COVID-19. In ACE, we are able to have the Internet of Things. We believe in the traceability. In fact, we enforce supply chain traceability. And currently, we have only to take in eggs and some diesel oil and feed. These are the 3 main components. Thus, we can increase our transparency in our production. I mentioned the shortest food mile production, therefore minimizing the impact on supply chain disruption without having to worry whether we have to transport our chilled fish to Jurong Fishery Port. ACE technology is automated, therefore we rely very little manual labor. Tank cleaning is not an issue. We don't have to clean the net. So therefore, well, not so much impact by the current labor shortages, except in our processing plant. The online platform that we have created, ACE Fish Market, during the pandemic lockdown, has seen that we went on too late to the market. That means we're a little bit out of synchronization, but nonetheless, we caught up and we're able to quite happily said that consumer can just buy directly online from www.fishmarket.com. We will be launching, in fact, on this coming Friday, ACE will launch its first neighborhood ACE Fish Market shop, where it's a specialty seafood shop with convenience, to make it convenience for our heartlander in 71 Circuit Road next to the McPherson MRT station. In the end of this year, we launched EcoSpark. EcoSpark is the lift dog that we have in our patent. It will be a hatchery to kitchen, lift dog H2K, and we hope that it can sparkle more innovation in our country, that we all understand that to fight for food security is not all about how much we produce, but how much input we need that is self-sustainable and locally sourced. This is a shop that we have. Now, I'll just sum up the concern in the three circles that I mentioned now. The impact on the aquaculture, we all know, have impacted on us. And three immediate concern, just as a summary: logistical bottleneck, and a change in consumer behavior, and the market accessibility. Now, what do we do about it? In ACE, we believe that the way we have created our business model, instead of selling fish at farm gate price, fresh chilled or ice chilled for consumer, we went on to a stage of able to have our own post-harvest at the upper deck. So I mentioned this just now, achieve Singapore food security, using the Internet of Things for the traceability of our product, increasing yield, that means to be able to grow more, fighting to lower its cost, to increase productivity by having more, increased profitability by higher productivity. ACE technology is automated, I mentioned, because of our ability to have a sheltered roof that we can keep all our sensors in place without worrying that it will be lost in the midst of a wave or a current. Online platform that we have, the offline of ACE Shop, and then the launching of the EcoSpark. Now, I will finish off with the part on how we achieve and how do we take the plunge. We didn't have a vision that Singapore will have 30 by 30 vision. We started in 2000 and as early as 2017 when there were no COVID incident. We built the first EcoArc, the world first purpose-built floating closed containment. Now we are a floating closed containment system. This was July 2019 when the Chief Executive Officer, Mr. Lim Kok Tai of Singapore Food Agency, was there to launch the EcoArc. And prior to the arrival of EcoArc on October 2019, ACE was awarded the most outstanding and most promising startup award. And you can see from this slide here, EcoArc #1 was named Abundance 1. E is our trademark, means fish and always surplus, so we have abundance. In Malay, Riziki, and in Tamil, Mutuki. That was the 19th of November 2019. And we have from 2019-20, where the first harvest by President Madam Halima, and on 20th November 2020 was our launching of our nursery and harvest deck. Now I'll go on to the part that I was asked to take the topic on. So having sum up that COVID has impacted on us, what can we do as a company or as a community or as a nation? ACE took on a plunge, not because of COVID. It took on a plunge because we wanted to chase our dream. We wanted to be able to serve the community on a humanitarian part of it, that we can give healthy fish. So then when we took the plunge, when EcoArc arrived, then we had the COVID. So taking a plunge, I put this to mean that you want to do something that is difficult, and you know it is also risky, and you know that you have to chase your dream in the midst of uncertainty. And that's exactly what I did when I took the plunge in 2019 January, when we signed a contract to build the first EcoArc. So this was the first EcoArc built. Then in 2020, in the midst of COVID lockdown phase 1, phase 2, in 2020, we decided that we have to, instead of switching off our light and keeping on the fish to grow, we decided to launch in July the construction of 3 more assets. Again, thanks to SFA and the Singapore government, we have Abundance 2, Abundance 3, and the EcoSpark to arrive December this year. So what other plunge have we taken on? Here is in the midst of...
last minute.
Yeah.
Okay. Thanks.
2 slides more. Okay, we're going to sum up now very quickly. Here shows the post-nursery. I mentioned this before. Now, going forward, the last part of my slide, in fact, last 2 slides, ACE wants to be able to move on with licensing to show ACE Farm and ACE Nursery is able to help farmers in their farm operation. Hope that when EcoSpark arrive, we have a post-harvest at upper deck, and then we hope that together, not just off-taking, we can do collaborative arrangement to be able to go to the market. Now, which market do we want to go? It must be the localness, SG to SG, support Singapore, and fighting the export market. So now this shows going forward, we're always forever grateful to our to Singapore government, to our partner, including Nanyang Polytechnic, who were the first to come forward, Dr. Jeffrey, Joel, thank you very much, and all my dedicated staff and colleagues who have helped chase the dream for us to be able to serve the community healthy, serve and provide healthy daily fish in abundance for the people. So this is what I say, thank you. And last and not least, I think what Bill Gates said is very true. Innovations that are guided by smallholder farmers. Don't look down on smallholders farmers, adapted to the local circumstances, which is local fish and local community, and sustainable, that is sustainable for the economy and for the environment, will be necessary to ensure food security for the future. This is my last slide. I hope you can see in the midst of our coastal, busiest port in the world, one of the largest LNG past us, and I hope you can spot aqua. So thank you very much, and I'm happy to take any question.
Yeah, okay, very good. Thanks for sharing what was EcoArc all about. There's a few questions. One of it is many local and international farms are speaking about sustainability, but how does ACE look to differentiate itself from farmers? Will ACE look into conducting third-party life cycle assessment to validate and quantify its sustainability claims? Okay.
Yeah, I'll take this question by just giving a little bit of a background. ACE, I think we have already attained preliminary global gap certification from Lloyd's Register. In the midst of COVID, they can't do a physical and they don't want to do a Zoom certification. In terms of sustainability, we have this in our DNA, and the United States, the FAO, have promoted us as a Singapore invention that can help in the Far East of Dubai, Oman, and Saudi Arabia and Qatar. And we received call from them because the recognition on our sustainability is because, like I mentioned, we treat the water before we discharge. So I was asked by some of the investors who are in the F&B, do you want to be on the supply side or do you want to be on the sustainability side? My question is, it takes two hands to clap. So we have submitted to be part of the BAP, and the BAP director told us that this is the first time they see a closed containment system with the ability to do the RAS, recirculation afloat. We don't do afloat because we believe that water is surplus in the sea given by God. We work with the nature, we protect it by giving it back. So the validification will come by the final source of the WWF, who wants to visit us and do a study into this, and they've been in Singapore for the last 10 years. So I can't say that we will get a full mark or a tick over our sustainability drive, but we believe that the world will get to know us. In fact, just 2 Saturdays ago, Chase the Future of Food Series 3 by the BBC, they highlight the EcoArc as well. So I hope I have answered the question.
All right. Just a quick answer. This person is asking whether how energy intensive is EcoArc, say, to a land-based RAS farm? Do you have any comparisons or any?
I think Dr. Jeffrey, you can answer for me. We submitted 3 years ago to a competition of urban solution. We didn't do a detailed study, but we have a chart. You want to answer for me? You were our.
You were the speaker, so you just do a quick one because okay. We're running out of time.
We didn't do a detailed study, but one thing for sure, this is called the Novus EcoArc because it's a novel offshore advanced hull. Hull means a platform that is submerged to the maximum submergent ability, 90%. Now that is due to Archimedes' principle. With the Novus Arc, we ballast both port and starboard side ballast tank. So we believe that closed containment system must be purpose-built and not converted from a barge. So because of that, it's purpose-built to achieve the full maximum submergent capacity. That when we deballast or when we do a full harvest, we empty the tank, we don't have the hill and the least of the equal. It's always on even keel. So I hope that the energy part of it comes in here now. When I'm 90% submerged, I only have 10% freeboard, which is called a freeboard, means the distance from the seawater level to the main deck is as low as 0.8 to 0.5 meter. And we consistently will do that. And we pump at 1.8 meter up. That's 2.5 meter of pressure head pumping. So therefore, I don't believe any RR system on land, unless they build a seawater reservoir, will have anything less than 2.5 meter. So I can only use this to give an illustration. I will not further elaborate how much energy they need. Okay.
Thanks. If you need more info, you can contact Mr. Liao on.
Yes.
Oh yeah. All right.
Contact me on my
Okay.
mobile 9090.
Okay, thank you very much for the
7400.
insights and all that. We will have to move on to our next speaker. Okay, thanks, Mr. Liao. You can stop sharing. Yeah.
Thank you very much. Thanks a lot.
Okay. Okay, next speaker is Miss Liris from Jala Technology. So she's going to share what can Jala do, all right, or what has actually Jala do in Indonesia and certain other parts of the countries. Okay, Liris, you can unmute yourself and share your screen. Thank you. And if you're ready, just start. Yep.
Thank you.
Share your slides or something, or if you have.
I do.
Okay, no problem. Yep. Okay, you're good.
Okay. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Good morning. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Liris. My name is Liris Maduningtyas. So I'm the CEO of Jala Technology. So we are focusing on the shrimp farming industry within Indonesia. We provide technology for farmers to boost their productivity, and as well as to boost their yields. We are also connecting the farmers with the right institution for financing, insurance, as well as market access. I guess before starting more deeply, I was going to try to a little bit lay out the industry that we're facing. Here is actually the shrimp industry, which has around 30 billion global market size, where we focus on Indonesia that accounts around 10 to 12% of it. And the problem that we are facing in the shrimp industry at the moment mostly is because of the unpredictable yields. This is mostly due to the shrimp disease, shrimp death, and the bad water quality, wrong management, and so on. And this can cost the farmers like around $23,000 loss per hectare. So a little bit about what we do, and later on I'll also explain about what COVID-19 also affecting or impacted in this industry. But what we do is actually we provide applications to manage the shrimp farms online, so that the farmers can give an access to what is happening to the farms. The first thing to do is that the farmers will input the cultivation data to the mobile app. So they will input feeding data, sampling data, water quality data, mortality data, and so on to the mobile app. And with those data, also for the water quality, some of them also using our product or hardware. This is an IoT that collects physical parameter that can send directly to our apps. But among those data that being collected, we articulate it into insight that give farmers recommendation systems so that the farmers understand what are the things that they need to do based on the data, what are the things that is actually they need to be aware of in the future, because we also provide them predictions about the farm performance, when to harvest, how much they should harvest as well. And this really increases the awareness and the knowledge of the farmers in order to perform better on the cultivation side. And this kind of data-driven technology we provide for the farmers in Indonesia help them to basically real-time monitoring the farms and their investor farms. For example, the owner that is sitting in other city can, track and monitor the farms by the apps. It is also give the farmers sort of like a prediction for the farm performance I mentioned earlier. It's sort of like they can understand what is the water quality will be look like in the next 7 days. What are the targeted biomass? The prediction of the biomass in the next 7 days. What the amount of the feed that I need to put on the farms tomorrow, the next from today, so that I can also link up on the stock inventory and so on. It is also given the farmers recommendation system based on the water quality data. Like for example, if the pH is unstable and the water quality is low, the system will tell the farmers that there's something wrong with the water, that the streams will most likely be not really want to eat, so that reduce the amount of the feed that you want to put, for example, like that. So using the technology like software applications, hardware, and tools like that, we've been collecting more than 9,000 data cycles in by the early 2021. So that's the data that we have here. It's shown that the productivity for farmers from one cycle to another cycles increased by 30%. We also been able to increase the survival rate as well as lowering the feed conversion ratio by 17%. I guess what are we doing here with Jala in the shrimp farms in Indonesia? We've been collecting data from thousands of farmers, thousands of users, thousands of data cycles. We've been able to create sort of like a Shrimp Indonesia monitoring platform where we basically know where's the farmers, how much they will harvest, like what is the estimate biomass in each region in area in Indonesia, what is the performance of the farms, like the growth rate, the survival rate, most likely the density, carrying capacity, FCR, and so on in each region in Indonesia, based on the data being inputted by our farmers itself. And we've been also releasing sort of like a data benchmarking point for the farmers in Indonesia, which this is something that comes from 4,000 of data cycles that have been already filtered in our apps. So we see that this benchmarking data showcase what are the typical productivity in Indonesia from, so the blue one is semi-intensive, the pink one is the intensive, and the blue one, the black one is actually the super intensive. And it is also come across other than productivity, which has average around 7 tons for the small scale and 13 tons for the intensive or big scale. We also have survival rate here for the same category. And we also have the stream growth rate and feed conversion ratio and many other data for the farmers to benchmark whether their performance is actually above, beyond, or equal to the standard of benchmarking in Indonesia. I mentioned previously about the prediction. This is one of the technology that we have. We sort of like trying to always improve our predictions and prediction and accuracy of our predictions. I give you 2 examples that we use here is for water quality. We try to analyze with the good data that come to our platform to analyze the prediction of 1 day ahead and 4 days ahead and 7 days ahead. The accuracy ranging from 70 to 84% in here, but it's keep growing to get better as much as the data coming into our platform. And one of other example is the survival rate prediction from the data that come into our platform. So we can analyze the prediction of survival rate that can later on to be used for prediction in biomass, when to harvest or what they should harvest. Having a business in giving the farmers access to technology really helpful on the cultivation side of the farmers. However, we also, as a business thing, we need to also help the farmers also in other side of the cultivation. So since we do have the data, where's the farmers and how much they will harvest, we in the other end has the data about the stream price, growth, and so on, and the demand from the processing companies. So we connect the farmers with the processor or the buyer in our trading platform. So this initiative is something that being born by early pandemic in 2020. So at that time, we in almost every sector has sort of like a, I can say a glitch where, oh, what's happening with this pandemic and so on. In Indonesia, it is a little bit affecting the farmers because they say that, oh, well, should I farm? Should I not farm? And then in the other hand, the buyer will also say, should I take the shrimp from that country or not? So you're affecting the export market so that there is limited buyer at that time. So we have to go on the field to connect the farmers with the local and retailer in Indonesia as the export market is decreasing. And come with the market access thing, we also help the farmers with the shrimp farm financing and insurance. This is something that we help the farmers to access with the things that they actually need to improve the infrastructure of the farm. Sometimes they don't have enough capital to find financing and insurance things, and they, we were here to help them to connect with them. We're here to help them to connect with the market access as well as the expert. And in the small farm program, we actually sort of like given them the day-to-day assistance program so that the smallholder farmers in Indonesia can increase. And the work that Jala been doing in this site is growing quite a bit in the past 3 years. So we've been acquired around 20,000 shrimp ponds in Indonesia, as well as we have more than 10,000 users at the moment in Indonesia, and helping them in day-to-day operations to produce around 20,000 tons of shrimp. So I guess that's a very, very short presentation of what we do in Java and what we're actually facing in this industry about the aquaculture landscape and how the COVID-19 is affecting the industry itself. Other than the pricing and the market itself, recently we also face some of the problem like logistic and so on. But it's getting better. I can say that the shrimp industry in Indonesia is one of the industry that can survive the COVID-19 and even increase. So the digitalizations like Jala also has been increased quite significant during the pandemic in COVID-19 because the need of online real-time monitoring is also increasing. Lastly, Jala has been in the industry for the past 3 years, and we would love to continue our work in the shrimp industry by, giving more exact goal, which is feeding the world with a more sustainable shrimp. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Liris, for that sharing of what your Jala technology can offer. All right. Let me see. Is there any questions? Let me see. Okay. There's one from Regis. He's asking what is the next development stages for Jala? That means next development stages for Jala.
Okay.
Fish farming included or international development? Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Sang. So the next development in Jala is really to improve the technology on inputting the data to our platform, because right now there's still a lot of data that is not being captured with our apps, or that the data is being inputted manually can actually be improved by AI or even by image processing and so on. So we are looking for a lot of collaboration at this point. We're looking for collaboration with a company that provide AI, image processing, satellite imagery, and those sort of like companies can help me to faster the data collection from farmers.
And
that
then
would be the development.
Okay, and he also asked about are you moving towards other species besides prawns, besides shrimp, maybe fish or something?
Well, at the moment, we still focus with streams. I think for the next 3 years, the reasons is actually pretty clear in Indonesia. Shrimp is 42% of the aquaculture. So, it yes, there's still need to expand to other fisheries, but again, with this technology like digitalization and traceability and sustainability that come forward after that, really be impactful for the product or fisheries that is being exported to other countries. Since we know the US-based users as well as the European and the Japanese, they still, the and Chinese, the need of sustainable and traceable seafood product is increasing, and that's why we still going to the stream. Like for Indonesia, tilapia, pangasius is also increasing. But the percentage of the market in Indonesia is not that much, and that sector industry of other fisheries that being exported mostly comes with the corporate farms, which somehow have a very very small market for us, and hopefully that we also want to expand there soon. After 3 years, we hope that those market is also evolving. The other country maybe. So we're going to Vietnam.
Okay, there's another question on based on the current trend, is the Indo-shrimp market shifting more towards domestic consumption or international consumption? And where do you think this trend will move towards in the next 5 years? Yeah.
Well, I think it's still international consumption, so it's still like around 90% more in international exported. I guess because we know Indonesia is not unlike Vietnam and Thailand that really really love shrimp. So we there is superstitious in Indonesia that come to generation eating shrimp, meaning that it's a very bad cholesterol for your body. So a lot of Indonesian people also believe that eating shrimp is actually good. And as well as the price of the shrimp is uncomparable compared to the chicken. I don't think that the trend local consumption will increase, but there's a movement that I can put it as a certain. There's a movement from the farmers itself, community of the farmers, and even the government. The movement that's called Ayo Makan Udang, which means let's eat shrimp. So I hope that kind of movement can be leveraged more and more. Jala is also helping to leverage that so that the consumption can be increased. Right now, per capita in Indonesia only eat like 3.2 kilogram of shrimps a year.
Most of it is still exported. All right, and one last question. Okay, this one is from Benedict Tan. He's asking about Indonesia still has many shrimp farmers who are not using tech, while there are more providers of such services. How does Jala differentiate from the other competitors, basically? Yeah.
Well, from our user base, around 21% is smallholder farmers. So, and around 41% is actually intensive farms, like medium. And 38% is the large-scale farmers. So our targeted market is the medium and large-scale farmers. And but also we see the smallholder farmers is also increasing. And works, there's a lot of service provider about this in Indonesia. Currently, so I guess we're still leading in terms of the number of users, number of data collection, number of downloads, and so on. What makes us different is that our features is evolving. So far, we have 1 or 2 or 3 steps ahead compared from our competitors in terms of features, as well as we give them not only just like services like technology like this, but we also have a complete solutions like providing financing, insurance for farmers, providing market access for farmers, connecting them with the expert, as well as providing them with the way to get a certification. So I can say with the more complete features, we are currently ahead from the competitor.
All right. Okay. And just maybe a quick one. This from Zoraida American. She's asking how much data collected from farmers is usable for your data analysis.
Well, I can say from all of the data that being inputted in the apps, not all of them is actually a good data. So we filter the data. What are the things that we say as a good data? It has more than 70% completeness on each data. So with the more than 70% of completeness on the data, which actually different, like there is a feed data, water quality data, sampling data, and things like that. So we use as much as possible for each of the category, more than 70% completeness, and input it in our data analytic to run into our algorithm, machine learning to provide the farmers with the feedback and prediction and so on.
All right. Okay.
So
thank you very much.
It's around 20%. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you very much for that. Answering all the questions. So we'll move on. Okay. Thank you for sharing. We'll move on to my talk. It should be a quick one. Let me share my screen. Sorry. Let's see. Okay. Here we go. Okay. Is it not showing? Okay, everybody. I hope everybody is still alive and listening. Okay. Right. I'll be sharing about supporting sustainable aquaculture practices in Singapore and beyond. Okay. We're from the School of Applied Sciences, SAS. Formerly, we're known as the School of Chemical and Life Sciences, and both of us, me, Jeffrey, and Dr. Mark, is actually the person in charge of the Center for Aquaculture Diagnostics and Vaccines at Nanyang Polytechnic. So what is Center for Aquaculture Diagnostics and Vaccine? Basically, it was incepted in 16th of November 2018. It's a licensed center because it was with this license, we are allowed to do R&D in and process veterinary biologics. Mainly, I work with vaccines, so that's why we have to have this license. Okay, the mission statement for a CADV is as such: we aim to be the one-stop provider of workable and deployable solutions to solve health-related problems and nutritional requirements of cultured aquatic animals, okay, be it fish, shrimp, or crabs. So these are the services that are available under CADV. We do in-farm visits to diagnose the disease outbreaks. We do isolation and detection of the pathogen. Following that, if we can identify the pathogen, we'll develop the autogenous vaccines that can then be prototyped or deployed to the farm to test it out. And then on top of that, we do also do development of diagnostic tools for the pathogen that we have detected. Okay, besides doing that, we also have certain tools for nutritional assessment, and we try to embark on sustainable feed that can enhance health of the aquatic species. Okay, besides the two main tasks that I just mentioned, we also conduct and design workshops or mini seminars such as this one here, right? So I'm actually a fish health and diagnostic expert. So I've been working with Asian sea bass for quite some time already, and then I recently moved towards working towards the Vietnamese catfish, which is Pangasius hypothalamus. All right, so I'll be sharing to you on what I did for Asian sea bass and the Vietnamese catfish. Okay, the first one was together with Barramundi Asia. We came up with an autogenous vaccine together with two of my other colleagues down here, right? So what happened was Barramundi Asia was suffering a lot of fish death, as you can see in this picture here. Many fish floating around and a lot of fish feed uneaten, okay? And this disease actually can cause about 80 to 90% mortality. Hence, they couldn't grow lots of fish. All right, with this kind of disease happening all the time. So we, Team KUSA, actually came up with the autogenous vaccine as a solution to the problem. Quickly identified the bacteria, which is Tenacibaculum maritimum, and quickly characterized it, and then did the PCR to confirm and sequencing. Following that, we did autogenous prototype autogenous vaccine, and we then deployed it to the farm to do the farm trials. Okay. So after a bit of refining here and there, we came up with a very workable vaccine that is effective. And as you can see here with the vaccine now, there's a reduction in mortality down to 10 to 20% mortality. Okay, it's a total reversal from the without the vaccine situation. So with that, we have the farm is now having a lot of fish, so bountiful harvest. Then that means translates to more fish for Singaporeans and other people to enjoy as well, right? So these are the 6 innovations that we did for Barramundi Asia. I won't go through them. You can have a look at it, okay? And what with all the solutions that we provided, which is a total package solution from the diagnosis to the production to the processing, packaging, and productization of the vaccine, Barramundi Asia actually saw the potential of this vaccine, okay, to increase their productivity. Hence, they spun off UVax Private Limited, which is the first Singapore SME commercial fish vaccine company. Because we couldn't, we as an educational institution couldn't supply them the amount that they need. So that's why they spun off UVax Private Limited, okay, to do the vaccines for them. So what we do was we transferred all our technology and know-how to UVax, and then UVax can now do the production and the diagnosis included for the vaccine. Okay. These are some of the snippets of the photos. This is the former boss, Mr. Yop. Okay, smiling. So am I, because the vaccine is a total success. You can see a total reversal of the mortality. And then Mr. Eric also is the one that's doing all the work in the farm. He's also seeing that the vaccine actually really, really works. And because of that, we also won several awards here. And these are some of the students that are involved, including some of my colleagues that's involved in the project. Okay, jumping into the mini symposiums that we coordinated. First one was actually in 2017, where we had the Sustainable Aquaculture, a Singapore Perspective. Next one was Biosecurity in Aquaculture. This was in 2019, and then 2018, yeah. Then this one is in 2019, recent advances in finfish and crustacean aquaculture. In 2020, COVID hit us, and then we decided we can't do much. We decided to hold it until this year to 2021, and that's where we are now, right? So besides helping the farmers in locally, I've also ventured to Vietnam together with this local company, KMP Private Limited and Canto University, and work on this Vietnamese catfish. Okay, this catfish was suffering with a lot of Aromonas hydrophila and Ewersella ictaluri infections. These are bacterial infections that cause about 60 to 80% mortality if left unchecked. All right. So we did a lot of trials in the Canto University lab facility. Thanks to all the personnel in Canto University, very, very well. We sort of finalized the formulation of the vaccine, and then we put everything, the 2-in-1 together. All right, and with that we planned to do the field trials in Vietnam. And this was done during the Covid-19 period. Okay, as you can see, in July 2020. Okay, we planned it in July and was coordinated by Canto University personnel. And we will do it in the KMP owned farm in Vietnam itself. Okay, the field trial has these 3 treatments. The control with has no injection, 100,000, and the other 2 groups were injected with a 2-in-1 vaccine, 100,000 fish each. So logistically, very challenging. We have to have the correct size of fish and pathogen-free, furthermore. Sufficient vaccines need to be made, and this was made by the Kanto University people, okay? And all the vaccination guns, all the logistics, vaccinators need to be trained. As can be shown here, the training was actually done in Kanto University by the personnel there also. And this is the vaccine that we formulated eventually. It's an oil-based Aeromonas hydrophila and Erbacilla ictaluri vaccine. Okay, with the training done, we proceeded to the field trials. So a few photos to show you how it's done in Vietnam. All right. So this is on the far left here is where the fish is receiving anesthesia. Okay, and then they will collect the fish in the basket, transport it on the motorbike, and then put it onto the table, and then the vaccinators will come in and vaccinate one by one. So this was done in late August 2020 at the KMP farms, right? So there were a lot of challenges. Initially, when the group started to vaccinate, there were a high mortality, okay? But eventually for the other group, which is the T3 group, okay, that received the vaccine, there were fewer mortality as they have learned, have practiced. So practice makes perfect, okay? But another thing was in October and November, there was really, really heavy rain, and then there was flash floods in Kanto. And these actually lead to the feeding of the fish being reduced and even halted in many days due to the rain. And not forgetting, slightly before that, there was no major lockdown due to the very few COVID infections. But after that, during this period, there was a lockdown imposed because of the increasing COVID-19 infections. And this even led to the fish feed supply being halted from being sent to the farm, and hence the fish were not really eating well, okay? Not being fed well, sorry. Okay. So the conclusion for the trial that we did was inconclusive, mainly due to the operational flaws, okay? But there were still some positive indications because the fish that we vaccinate, the 2 groups of them, are heavier than the controls. And when we cut open the controls versus the vaccinated one, we still see that the controls, some of the internal organs are still showing infections. Okay, whereas the ones receiving the vaccine do not really show any infection. Okay. But the very fact that the fish were malnourished, okay, due to the insufficient feeding and heavy rain and the COVID-19 restrictions made it worse. And so the whole data that we collect is not really conclusive, and we can't really say much about it. All right. So lessons learned from this episode is such that we need to know the logistic restrictions and the processes in the country. Okay, first, and then we need to train a competent team that is able to become skilled vaccinators, so that there's a lower mortality during vaccination. Sorry, and then we need to account the weather patterns in the field and the country that the trials will be conducted, especially. Okay, and adequate fish feed needs to be fed to the fish, because undernourished fish leads to lower immunity, lower protection even after vaccination. Okay, and last but not least is this is best not to conduct any trials during COVID period or any major disruptions, as there's many unexpected events that can throw off your trials, and then there goes all what you plan to do, and the results will be not reliable anymore. Okay, so I'd like to acknowledge this is my last slide. Okay, acknowledge and thank you the boss, management, and workers from BA and UVAX, as in their cooperation on developing the TIMA vaccines, the Dean and Kanto University staff for their willingness to participate in the autogenous vaccine development, and the coordination of the field trials in Vietnam. Then my director, Dr. Joel Yi, and NYP itself for allowing me to be involved in this project locally as well as overseas in Vietnam. And not forgetting my students who are involved in the project as well. Okay. With that, I end my talk. That's my contact. If you need to contact me to stick anything, you can please go ahead. So next, I would like to stop sharing here because the next one speaker will be Dr. Mark. All right. So he'll be sharing his insights on what CADV has been doing. All right. Mark, over to you.
Yep. Okay. We'll take the questions for Jeff. After I'm done. All right. So thank you for staying behind for this last presentation. I'll be quick. I'm pretty mindful of the time. So I'm Mark. I'm Jeff's colleague, as he mentioned, and we're both from the School of Applied Sciences from the Center for Aquaculture Diagnostics and Vaccines. So my talk today will be on mud crab grading strategies. So at the school, we hope to establish a program in precision and sustainable aquaculture. Primarily, we look at working with companies, industry to improve efficiency and productivity of their farming processes to mitigate disease and as well, and to lower carbon footprint as well. So my interests are basically in these two areas, first in mud crab RAS systems and more recently in some shrimp biofloc work as well. And my main collaborator is It Xiang, who was our speaker as well earlier on today from RAS Aquaculture. The other area that I'm working on is on cell cultured seafood with Umami Meats, Mir. So this is just a montage of our crab facility at Nanyang Polytechnic, and this project is done with RAS Aquaculture. The objective is essentially to develop a more productive and efficient vertical indoor farm for mud crabs. What we have done to try to achieve this objective is to develop a new box design with improved solid clearance and also a new piping system for enhanced biosecurity, and add to that a movable camera, which will take snapshots of each box at predetermined time intervals, and it will give us a idea of which crab has molted, for example, and will also probably help us correlate feeding patterns in each individual box with the fattening with the fattening of the crab. So if we can correlate feeding patterns with the meteor crab, then that is something that we want to do as well. So this is the system that we currently have ongoing at Nanyang Polytechnic. It's still in development, and we should be able to have a full working prototype in the coming months. So back to my presentation on mud crab and the grading technique. So really, mud crab is a key ingredient in many iconic Singapore dishes. Pepper crab, butter crab, chili crab. I don't think I need to mention anymore. And of course, it's also mentioned on the Tourist Promotion Board's website. So essentially, it's one of the key Singapore delicacies. But the problem really in Singapore's context, right, is that very often we pay good money for a very expensive dish of crab, but we sometimes get very lean crabs, right? Lean crabs meaning watery crabs which are quite hollow inside. So much so that some seafood restaurants even give you a little card while you're waiting for your dish with a sort of a disclaimer to tell you that they cannot guarantee that you get 100% solid crab. So on the right here is actually a picture of a crab that's full to the brim, to the shell with meat. So how do people identify mud crabs? So essentially, I think the industry today uses a very empirical methods and approaches. So very based on tacit cues, they may look at the coloration of the shell. They may press the carapace a little bit to check whether the crab, the carapace is soft. They may look at whether the teeth on the chela pads are worn out, and they may come to their own decision as to whether the crab they have is meaty or not. There are other approaches. This one is from Australia. Again, can be quite subjective. Again, the approach is to actually press the carapace for a female on top, for a male, the reverse side. And what we tried to do was actually to look around all over for a more a scientific way and a less empirical way at judging the grade of a mud crab. So basically, we came across this standard from SEAFDAC, which is the Southeast Asian Fisheries Development Council, and they have a kind of rubric, right, with the body weight of the crab on the left here and the carapace width for females. So how this table works is essentially like this. If you have a crab that's 700 grams, you should expect that the carapace width should be around 15.5 to 16 cm. Anything more, that would probably be indicative or suggest that the female crab that you have would be leaner because it's a bit too large for its body weight. And so they have a similar kind of grading system and numbers for male crabs. We evaluated this approach and found it to be not very accurate. So we even dabbled with ultrasound. We took different morphometric measurements. But by far, what we found in the early stage of our work on mud crab grading was that the hemolymph, if sampled right from a crab, can give you a very good idea of the meat content. So how does this method work? So basically, we take a needle and we take a little bit of crab hemolymph from either the last walking leg or the last swimming leg or from the chela. And we use a low-cost device called it's a refractometer. You can buy this for about $5, for example. So we take a drop of hemolymph and we put it on the refractometer. And this gives us a reading, right? And what we determined was that for crabs, which gave us a refractive index of over 1.35, this would be a very good meaty crab or a grade A crab. And anything less than 1.35 would be in the B range or not so good. And as the numbers drop lower, then you get a really, really lean or watery crab. So we found that this approach was really, really accurate, very high accuracy because I think we confirmed whether we benchmarked this method of grading with cooking the crab. So we would do some destructive testing. We would cook the crabs, crack open the carapace and look at the meat content. We also ran some protein gels and we could correlate there was a trend with the protein content and the refractive index. So altogether, we would say that this approach was really accurate, over 90%. But there are certain limitations. First, it's invasive. It's very impractical to go around with a needle and syringe to sample hemolymph. And secondly, it's not good because crabs can be sampled at most twice or so in fattening systems like our crab RAS system because the puncture site can become infected. And it's also time consuming and to a large extent quite skill dependent. So several limitations. So we looked, so basically these are some pictures of the refractive index approach that we have and the meat content of cooked crabs. So the crab 7, 8, and 4 here gave us high refractive index readings. And as you can see from the pictures, the meat of the crab is actually quite full, right, all the way to the shell. Whereas crab 3 over here, probably a little bit less desirable for the consumer because there's a little bit more space between the meat and the shell. So this would typically be a B grade crab. So we looked around for a more practical, a more quicker, more sensible approach for crab grading, and we looked at spectroscopy. Near-infrared spectroscopy is essentially a method that's used quite widely in food authentication and validation studies. Is gaining traction in that area. The near-infrared spectrum, the near-infrared portion of the electromagnetic spectrum is in this region of about 900 nanometers to about 1,800 nanometers. And at this range of the electromagnetic spectrum, the absorption of coefficient of tissue, melanin, hemoglobin, and all is quite low, right? So what happens is that in this region as well, light can penetrate a lot deeper, right? A few millimeters down, possibly through the shell as well. And at this region as well, the light absorbed is at frequencies which correspond to the bonds of certain biomolecules, like the OH bond, CHNA. So we try to use near-infrared spectroscopy to use as a method to grade mud crabs. We evaluated several platforms, but we found that the Micronear platform by Viavi was actually one of the better performing platforms. But in its native format, on the left over here, it doesn't work. So we had to improvise and come up with some innovations and modifications to how we actually took the reading with the Micronear device. And what we did was we engineered a custom mount. We also tweaked the light source. And we used one of the probe accessories that comes from Viavi as well, which we found to give us the best resolution and the best spectral capture for Micronear. So these three inventions are our proprietary know-how for mud crab grading. So how is it done essentially? What we do is we collect raw spectra, raw near-infrared spectra from meaty and lean mud crabs, to develop a calibration model. But before we can develop the model, what we do is that we have to perform some statistical treatment, like the standard second derivative and standard normal variate. And what we found was that after sampling 800 claws, we could get some very good PCA separation or grouping between the meaty crabs, the lean crabs, and the borderline crabs. So what we did was to benchmark essentially, right, the spectra with the refractive index value and also with cooked crabs to develop this near spectra model for PCA classification of meaty and lean crabs. And the model was built with specimens from two species, actually, Scylla serrata and Scylla truncibarica, but more from Scylla serrata. But of course, a lot of near-infrared software packages and chemometric software is not really user-friendly for an end user, for example, in a wholesale center, for someone who's working on a farm, for example. So although the PCA separation was pretty convincing, we could separate out meaty and lean crabs, we had to create a app or software to speed up this process to give us a real-time readout of the grade of the crab, right? So what we did was to develop a software. And how this software works, for example, if you look at this sample, there's this green rectangle here is actually a claw that's being sampled, and we scan 5 times, and if it's all A grade, you get a green box next to the A. So this is done in like 10 seconds or so. So to give you another example, if you scan another sample that's a B grade crab, you can see in this small little box here that there are 5. Again, B appears 4 times, and somehow one reading was matched to an A, but you still get a B grade. So we can reduce the number of scans to 3 as well, and you probably get the readout if you reduce the 3 in the matter of about 3 to 5 seconds. So with this approach, we can now have live real-time PCA classification of mud crab grading. And we built this software was based on SIMCA classification developed by a company for us. So in summary then, how does this method compare? Well, we can demonstrate live PCA modeling of nerve spectra has demonstrated the feasibility of grouping and classifying meaty versus lean mud crabs. And this approach merely takes just a few seconds. The overall accuracy is typically in the region of about 80 to 90% for sorting lean versus meaty mud crabs from the different species, from 4 different species of mud crab. This model that we have currently is a lot more accurate for Scylla serrata, 90 to 100% accuracy. And it can also be tuned the model can be tuned and customized to users' acceptance levels. So essentially what we can do is basically, if you are targeting the high-end restaurants, we can tune the model such that the stringency is at a higher level. But if you don't need such a high stringency in terms of the meat content and how meaty a crab is, we can actually tune it lower a little bit. There is some subjectivity that occurs when we classify these borderline specimens, which are particularly hard to group. And we have some work currently in progress to develop a new model that could be a lot more quantitative based on PLS regression. So with that, thank you very much. And I've ended my presentation. If there are any questions, Jeff and I will be happy to take them now. Thank you. Okay, so I see a question in the chat, which is, can we use the density to test the crab? What does could you elaborate a little, Waynan, Lee Waynan, on what do you mean by density?
Allow him to talk, then we can maybe explain.
Yeah. Okay. Sure. Yeah.
Okay. Hi, Waynan. You can unmute yourself and speak.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can. Thanks, Waynan.
So, like, if the crab's volume is the same, so if there's more meat, then the weight is higher. So I think maybe we can just measure the density of the crab, so we may know like which crab like has more meat than others if the volume is the same. Yeah, that's what
that's a interesting way of thinking about this issue. I guess it makes sense, but there may be some issues because the carapace is of different thickness. We realize in different species, so it can vary quite a bit from crab to crab. Number one, and number two, I think in terms of in putting this in a practical way of doing, it may be a little bit challenging. I'm not sure what you have in mind, but it could be possible. Yeah, that's an interesting suggestion.
I think the density also doesn't really work because even in those non-meaty crabs, it's those parts are also filled with water. Okay, so and the water and the meat, I think it's not much of a difference. So you can't really tell there's a slight difference of
possibly,
yeah. So
and on your second,
yeah.
And on your second question, Waynan, yeah, sure, why not? I mean, we could always consider you for a research project during your vacation, right? In JCU, certainly. Why not?
Yeah, that can be arranged.
Yeah, that can be arranged.
Any other questions?
Jeff, you have one or two questions?
I actually answered them already, but
okay.
Never mind. Okay.
I think in the chat.
Yeah, in the chat.
Yeah.
The chat. No, I think I understand. There's one from Benedict. He was asking me, have the cost savings due to the effectiveness of my vaccines for barramundi been quantified before? Okay. I actually don't have the figures. But the vaccines that we develop actually needs to be first, very, very cheap. Next, very effective. Okay, that means it has to at least protect or have a survival rate of maybe around 60 to 80%. Okay, and it has to be safe also. Okay, so another thing about vaccines is that for it to be beneficial and cost effective, the number of fishes that you vaccinate needs to be of a certain number. And of course, the value of the fish is also critical. So based on that, then you only decide whether you want to have the whole fish vaccinated or not. Okay, if it's too small numbers to protect and then the efficacy of the vaccine is low, then it's no point in doing a vaccine. Right? I hope I answer the question, Benedict. Yep. Okay. Is there any more? Let me see. I think that's about it. One. Oh, the other one was what are the common causes of bacterial infection for in the farm? Most of the bacteria that is present is actually endemic. That means present already in the water. Okay. The main thing that is causing the disease outbreak is actually could be like high stocking density or overfeeding and things like that, which increases the organic load in the water. Another thing to note is due to the perhaps the climate change, which increases our temperature on the water, become warmer, and hence this bacteria can actually grow faster, and then can actually infect the fish much easier. All right. So those are the two causes of these bacterial infections in the farm, actually. All right. I don't see any more questions, Mark.
There's one in the chat, but I will address Shiwan's question in the chat from Zura. There's a question for you. But, so Shiwan, in terms of sampling and sample preparation, what are the watchouts to prevent interferences? So what we do is actually we standardize the point, the spot location in which we take the near-infrared spectra from. And the position is quite important to standardize. So we actually take readings from both claws at a particular position, and to overcome the interferences, we actually have external light source as well. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Maybe any other last questions or burning questions for all the other speakers, maybe. Yeah, we'll just take maybe 2 more questions from the other speakers if you want to quickly post it. Anybody else? No? Okay, in the chat. Okay. Oh, there's one from Zuraida. Okay. With your vaccine, do you have information on how many times do you need to vaccinate over the culture period? Normally for vaccines, we try for injection based vaccines, we try to have only once in the lifetime of the whole growing of the fish, right? Another one from Dr. Ravi is your vaccines are made of DNA vaccines or recombinant vaccines? Okay, mine is neither DNA vaccine nor recombinant vaccine. These are whole bacteria that is inactivated for the TMA vaccine, as well as those in Vietnam, the Aromonas hydrophila and the Avicilla taluri are all killed vaccines. Okay. Yep. Any other things? I think that's about it. Yep.
So thanks everyone once again for coming today. I know it's past 5. I don't know whether if Joel has anything to say, but before you go, could you just help us scan the webinar feedback form and
yes.
Provide some comments, and if you want the abstract booklet that's available at the QR code on the
abstract
left.
booklet will also contain the emails of all the speakers that you want may want to contact to get more information or discuss.
And you can always ask us questions offline.
Yeah.
Drop us an email, and we'll be happy to answer them and connect you or get connected with you. And if there are requests for internships, I guess that's something we could explore as well, right?
Oh, there's one more question. Wait, on my side, from Ambadi. Is killed bacterial vaccines a cocktail of different pathogens? No, you first have to identify that bacteria that's causing the disease. Then you make the killed vaccines for it. And then if there's another one that causes it, causes another infection, then you have to still identify that one and make another one before you combine them together. Okay, you cannot grow the two together in one vessel and then just make a cocktail out of it of vaccine. Okay, you have to individually isolate it first and then combine it later. Yep. Okay, I hope it I answer your question. All right. Right. Any other things?
Okay,
No?
then. So,
Okay.
thanks everyone once again, especially to our participants, and of course, our speakers who have remained behind. All of you all, thank you so much for coming. We hope that next year we will be able to hold this event again, but not in this kind of format. Hopefully, in person, in one of the NYP lecture theaters. So, thank you once again. Have a great evening, and please stay safe and do connect with us if you have anything to collaborate with or if you have any questions. Thank you so much. Thanks.
All right. Thank you.